Yeah.
I'm with you.
You could do it under amending the agenda to refer it over to the...
Full-size pickup.
That way it would eliminate some people.
Folks, we're going to get started here.
To remove that item and then have it replaced with the next RMA meeting.
Well, welcome to the April 13th meeting of the Grand Traverse County Resource Management and Administration Committee, and we'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And if the clerk would call the roll.
Commissioner Gilman,
Here.
Inman,
Here.
Henschel,
Present.
Lemkool,
Here.
Thomas,
Here.
Maxbauer, here, Fleece,
Present.
Wheelock,
Yes, ma'am.
Richardson.
Here. And next item is the approval of the minutes of March 9th.
Moved as presented.
Oh, yeah, go ahead.
Did you, Herb, did you? Okay.
That's me, and then
Yeah.
Somebody,
Fleece.
one of the gang.
Any discussion on the motion? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion carries. This brings us to the opportunity for first public comment. And if the clerk will read the rules on that.
Any person shall be permitted to address a meeting of the Board of Commissioners which is required to be open to the public under the provision of the Michigan Open Meetings Act as amended. Public comment shall be carried out in accordance with the following board rules and procedures. 1. Any person wishing to address the board shall state his or her name and address. 2. No person shall be allowed to speak more than once on the same matter, excluding time needed to answer commissioners' questions. The chairperson shall control the amount of time each person shall be allowed to speak, which shall not exceed 3 minutes. Chairperson may, at his or her discretion, extend the amount of time any person is allowed to speak.
Okay, is there any member of the public wishing to make public comment at this time?
Got one over here.
Just come on up.
Dave Taylor. I live at 4199 Christina Lynn Lane, Braun, Michigan. I'm also the Grand Traverse County Road Commissioner. And I just wanted to talk to you about, we're having a pavement preservation seminar at the Civic Center on April 25th. And I want to encourage everyone here to come to that. Starts at 8 o'clock in the morning, it lasts till noon. And the person that's putting this seminar on, I've known for over 20 years. He retired out of MDOT. And he works at Michigan State now. And he goes around and does seminars on pavement preservation, different fixes. You know, there's more than just paving out there for fixes. And I worked with Larry years ago. We co-chaired a guidance committee to work, we were over several subcommittees that did road specifications for road projects. So I've known him for a long time, and I don't think anyone knows more about preserving our roads than Larry Galehouse. So if you're free on that date on your, you know, this would be well worth
April
attending.
25th at 8 a.m., right?
Starts at 8, goes till noon.
Okay.
And where is that again, Dave?
It's open to the public. Sorry.
Where is that again?
Over at the Civic Center.
At the Civic Center, okay.
Right.
They got tea and crumpets for the early risers.
Yes, we'll have a donut,
Coffee
a coffee,
and
or whatever.
Dave, I'm planning on coming.
Okay, I appreciate it if you do come. So,
Thanks.
all right, thank you.
Anyone else wishing to make public comment? Okay, and at this time we'll close public comment. There will be another opportunity at the end of the meeting. And brings us to the approval of the agenda.
I'd like to
Lemko?
make a change on the agenda if I could. I'd like to remove the custodial contract and have it put on next month's Resource Management Administration meeting because Danny is not here, he's on vacation, so
Okay.
if that's all right.
Well, yeah, I'd just like to point out there are several people in the audience that are here for that
And
presentation. so
That's
just
why
wanted
I
to be aware.
wanted to pull it off, so then if they wanted to leave, they could do so.
Okay.
If that's fine with everybody.
Okay.
Do I need a motion to pull that off?
Well, I think what we need is a motion to approve the agenda as, you know, with the
With your
change in it.
Okay, that's fine. I'll do that.
Okay. Do I have a second? All right. Any further discussion? Okay. All in favor of the changed agenda, excuse me? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Motion carries.
Go watch the Red Wings. Okay. Okay, thanks.
Okay. Special orders of business, we have none, which then brings us to the consent calendar. Oh, let's go ahead.
The purpose of the consent calendar is to expedite business by grouping non-controversial items together to be dealt with by one commission motion without discussion. Any member of the commission, staff, or the public may ask that any item on the consent calendar be removed therefrom and placed elsewhere on the agenda for full discussion. Such requests will be automatically respected. If any item is not removed from the consent calendar, the action noted, receive and file, or approval, is approved by a single committee action adopting the consent calendar. A, receive and file. Number 1, 2011 Human Resource Snapshot, first quarter 2011. Number 2, Grand Traverse Conservation District Monthly Report. Number 3, Road Commission Monthly Report. Number 4, Housing Liaison Monthly Report and Program Status. B, approval. 2010-2011 Victim Rights Agreement Prosecuting Attorney.
Okay. Is there any member of the public who would like any item on the consent calendar removed for further discussion? Hearing none, is there anyone on the board who wishes to remove anything? Yes, Jason?
B for discussion.
Which one?
B, please. B1.
Okay, item B. All right, we'll put that down under unfinished business. Okay, do I have a motion to approve the consent calendar as amended without item B?
I'll make that motion.
Second.
Second? Okay. Get the second?
Gilpin?
Okay. By roll call, please.
Commissioner Inman?
Yes.
Henschel?
Yes.
Limkul?
Yes.
Thomas?
Yep.
Max Bauer?
Yes.
Fleece?
Yes.
Wheelock?
Yes, ma'am.
Gilman?
Yes.
Richardson?
Yes. Okay, motion carries. Okay, that brings us to department action items, and the first one of that is a presentation by Julie Clark, who's Executive Director of the Traverse Area Regional Trails. And as you see, she has Ted Okerstrom with her tonight.
I learned from the last time that I was here, I have to sit and stay seated, otherwise I bop out of the camera. So I'll do my best to keep hands and face within view shot. I want to apologize tonight. I seem to have technical difficulties with this particular presentation. Commissioner Max Bauer was there on Monday, so she can tell you there is a slide presentation that normally goes with this, but didn't happen tonight. I apologize for that, and I'd be happy to get it for you if you all are interested. Or we have a couple of other items or places that will be going, Garfield Township and their Park and Rec Commission as well, in case you want to see the whole dog and pony show. The reason we're here tonight, and I'm here with Ted Okerstrom, who has been a board member of TART and a visionary and passionate trail advocate for the past 30-plus years. And we also have Brian Vanderbrand with Garfield Township. He was a partner in this project. And the project tonight that I'm here to talk about and give a very brief presentation about is, we'll use little study aids here, the South Airport Road feasibility study. You, the county, the city, Sarah Lee, and TART all entered into a partnership with the Road Commission. We secured a coastal zone management grant to pick up where a 1994 study left off with regards to a pedestrian crossing at South Airport Road. South Airport Road, right there at Boardman Lake, obviously is an intersection of a lot of different things. There's a built trail to the north and then proposed trail system to the south. There's a lot of public land on both sides, and what spurred this 2010 study were a couple of different things. First of all was land acquisition that was being done by Garfield Township as part of the Boardman River Reserve, Nature Reserve. So the AT&T parcel, that peninsula, Garfield Township is taking that into their ownership, and it's a very exciting piece of property, and it'll be a beautiful trail system once developed. Also, of course, to the north, trail was developed along the east side of Boardman Lake, and then the north side in 2008. So in about 2004, trail construction really started. Back in 1994, a feasibility study was done looking at this same area in South Airport Road. That was not the first time this area has been looked at. Back in 1977, the city plan, the Traverse City Plan, looked at the Boardman Trail system as well. So this area has long had a spotlight and the attention for trail development on it. What also helped drive this 2010 study was the Grand Vision. The Grand Vision came out and said, hey, we're looking at expanded pedestrian and bicycle networks. And this obviously fits into that vision. This was a partnership with Garfield Township. Brian really played an important role, as Garfield is very interested in how the trail system develops south and west along Boardman Lake. And then Ted and Fred Hoisington. Fred was a former city planner, and then, of course, in the private world. Both of those gentlemen really drove this project. And I just wanted to give Ted a couple of seconds to explain why he has carried this torch for nearly 30 years.
Well, the truth is, I'm trying to put bodies in beds and people in restaurant seats. That's the overall driving force that got me started in this. My background is hotels. I had the pleasure of running the Park Place for Mr. Power for 15 years, and we spent a lot of time building that business up, and I found that cross-country skiing in the wintertime was something that hadn't been done around here, professionally, but commercially. And so then I just happened to run across the Ranch Rudolph and looked at it and made a offer and ended up buying that for the hotel, and the TART became a reality, and that was the beginning of cross-country skiing in this area. Really, it's an important issue as far as the project was concerned. The importance of having something for people to do here in the wintertime. Well, we have an opportunity, and I think the opportunity has been displayed to us a number of times. We've had 1,000 to 3,000 people coming up here in the off-season and spending good money. I had the pleasure of visiting with the president of the Convention Visitors Bureau for a few minutes this afternoon, and I just asked him for a few responses, and he said that we have about 4,300 units available in our area. Now, you can take that number of units and start multiplying it by the average rate and get an idea of what kind of money we can bring into the community. It's in the millions, and that brings back the program that we're here to talk about, and that is the tunnel. I think that Brian and my partner here will do a good job of relaying to you information within the feasibility study. But we are determined to bring this project to a final conclusion, and we're going to need help from you in determining some of the places to find this money. And I know that you all have some experience in that area, and we'll be back with you to discuss financing of the project itself. And I'll let you continue.
Well, we're not here tonight to talk about financing. Tonight, we're here just to share the results, because this is one step. This is one piece of a larger puzzle. Ted spoke to some of the benefits of trails. I could go on for hours about what a good connected trail system can do. I won't. Instead, I'll just highlight, we know they promote health, they promote economic development, and they promote quality of life, all things that help big picture economic development. What the study did was look at 3 different crossings itself of the road, a bridge, a tunnel, and then a new highway bridge. Maybe you can guess, the preferred alternative came up as a tunnel, so a prefab type tunnel. We also looked at trail routes, because once you get to the south, you really need to figure out where that trail will go and how it will connect. So we looked at 4 different routes, some off of that peninsula and on the existing road, 2 within, kind of paralleling how you get across the peninsula, because of course you do have Boardman River, which sits right to the west. So the underpass that was proposed was on the east side of the Boardman River, so thus there would be another bridge crossing to the west. All those different analyses were done. It was put through a pretty rigorous start to an environmental assessment, meaning we looked at different impacts, and we did come up with a preferred alignment. But what we really came up with was an impact of what a trail development and what a real focus on this particular area, the Logan's Landing and South Airport Corridor, could mean. It's more than just where a trail will go, to the right, to the left, 10 feet wide, 8 feet wide. That becomes almost secondary when thinking about what an established trail network can mean in this area and can mean to the county, to the township, and to the city. Because it becomes a transportation network, it becomes a recreational corridor unlike any that we have in an urban area, and it offers a chance to refocus that spotlight, that economic development spotlight, in an area that desperately needs it. Logan's Landing, maybe we can say it's there, but I think it has a lot more potential to it. And what this study really helped show is that people want trails. Right before I came here, I saw a new study that was done by the National Realtors Association. And they found that a majority of people want to live in a walkable, bikeable community. People are willing to give up space. People are willing to give up dollars. I am a living example of that. I came here for the purpose of living in this type of a community. So it's a choice that people are making, and they're choosing it based on the type of community they want to live in. And what this study did was show some really good examples, and I will have copies available for anybody who's interested in the details. But it showed what we could do if we worked together. It's not the county's project. It's not Garfield's project. It's not TART's project. It's certainly not the city's project. We couldn't do it, and we shouldn't do it, unless we're all working together. This was a first step in identifying possibilities. We're not here tonight to say we need $1.1 million for a tunnel. We're here tonight to say there's a great opportunity ahead of us, and when the time is right and the interest is there, both on the public and private side, this will be a great thing for the community.
Any questions? Herb?
Yeah, this is the second time I've heard this presentation, and I'll reiterate the same concerns that I had the last time that I heard it. And that is, I think this has been flawed because it didn't cover enough of the area. Garfield Township, within the next 2 months, is going to be putting in new light signals there at Park Drive, going across Airport Road. And I'm just very concerned that we didn't look at whether or not that's an option to be able to cross there and then go down Keystone and then cut into and take a bridge across to connect to the YMCA. You know, I really think we really need to have this trail. It's a very positive thing for the community. I'm just concerned that I believe that because they didn't expand the parameters wide enough that they didn't look at one other option. And I think they need to look at that other option before we start putting a tunnel in. So that's my concerns.
Chris?
I spoke to Julie about this after her presentation to the City Commission on Monday, and I just want to toss this out there publicly. I think this is a wonderful opportunity to work with the Park Authority that is already in existence with Garfield Township and the City of Traverse City. Unfortunately, the Parks Department at the county does not have a 5-year DNRE plan, so we cannot qualify or do not qualify for Michigan Trust Fund dollars. But a park authority that does have a 5-year DNRE plan would qualify. And this would be a wonderful opportunity. I mean, we have Medalley Park, and perhaps we could somehow incorporate Medalley Park into that park authority, work with Garfield Township, work with the City of Traverse City, and use the DNR Trust Fund money, dollars, to improve the trail system in that way. And I don't know the particulars, but...
Yeah.
Okay, Jason?
Commissioner Max Power, are you talking, well, actually, the trail, does that come through, or does that touch county property? It does, okay.
It does.
And that's the part at Logan's Landing?
Yes.
Okay. And what you were saying is, could we give that to their park, to Garfield?
To an authority. I mean,
that'd be great.
Yeah. The cost of maintaining Medalley Park is minimal. And if we could somehow...
Transfer
it would be
it
a
over
first step, is to working regionally to improve our park system, improve the trails, and take advantage of the trust fund money that is out there.
The only other thing I was going to make a comment to is Garfield Township's number one priority is that strip along Airport Road. They put underground sprinkler systems, they put trees, they've really tried to make that more of a focal point for it because it represents Garfield Township. And I commend them for having the foresight to make that happen. They really are continually trying to make that a beautiful area. So, and I think, Medalley Park is also just one of those pieces of the gem. The east part of the trail, I use it all the time. Connecting to the trail going from the YMCA south all the way to the Sabin Dam. I mean, we got gems, and even Garfield Township has said, we want to protect the Boardman Valley corridor. Grand Traverse County, we have the biggest park system right there. We have more land than anybody else, right there with the Nature Education Reserve and with the Conservation District. I mean, we got all the things. We got all the pieces that we haven't tied them together, and we need to tie them together.
Yeah. And if I could comment on that too, because it is about, basically, like you say, finishing the network. Mm-hmm. We have all the trails in the Conservation District, farther south in the Boardman Valley. We have the trail, the East Boardman Lake Trail, that basically connects with the Tart Trail that runs all the way to Sutton's Bay and Acme, and hopefully we'll eventually go around the west side of Boardman Lake as well. So it forms one enormous network of...
Well, Kingsley, I think, would like
trails.
to see us connect that trail to them, and then connect the Kingsley to Cadillac to the White Pine Trail all the way to Grand Rapids.
Yeah.
I mean, their pieces are there. We just got to get that
And I'll be
connection.
back before you to talk about that connection.
I'm sure you will.
And I just wanted to mention, as we speak, Julie, there is a Parks Board meeting going on over at the Civic Center, so if you want to swing by and mention this on your way home.
Any other comments or questions for the Tart folks? Okay.
I really appreciate the opportunity tonight. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, so the next item on our agenda is the dams, current funding status of dam removal, and request for funding assistance. Dennis, are you?
Yep. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and Todd Kalish from the implementation team is going to talk about the funding aspect of this. For the new commissioners, I want to point out that the county board appropriated $25,000 along with the city about, I think it was a year ago last fall, for the purposes of supporting the administrative costs for taking out the dams. To this point in time, we have received grant funding in the amount of over $3 million for these projects, and our contribution to this, as owners of two, has been $25,000. We're to the point now where we continue to have funding, where we continue to find funding to work on the dam removal, but we have a management team in place, which is Conservation Resource Alliance. And while we have $50,000 available for their contract this year, we are short in what we need to fulfill the full contract, and I've included the scope of work in here for your review. We're asking you to consider an appropriation of $20,000. The city has already approved an appropriation of $20,000. We do this as partners. We're suggesting that can come out of the County Facilities Boardman River Dams Contract Services line item. And we're asking to do this as an ongoing and continuing commitment on behalf of the county towards this project. When I look at this, and I think when you hear Todd talk about this in more detail, I think the $25,000, while it's a lot of money, of course, $25,000 that we have already spent and another $20,000 is really a small amount of money to bring in so far over $3 million in grants. But I will tell you, having gone and made presentations before Great Lakes Fisheries and in putting proposals together for other foundations, one of the very first questions they ask is, what is the commitment on behalf of the local units of government? And while it's only a small amount of money, it goes a very long way when they know that the county and the city as partners are putting general fund money into this project in order to be a partner in getting it done. So my recommendation and my request is that you consider the $20,000 appropriation to match the city's appropriation so that we can get through this year with the project as it is right now.
Motion to approve.
Mr. Wheeler?
So I was going to make a motion to approve the appropriation.
Okay, I'll support.
Commissioner Henschel?
Just curious why we didn't see this coming.
We did.
We did? So it's in...
It's not, the money is in a contract line item in the budget for Boardman Dams, but we did not know when we would need an appropriation. And so the last one was a year ago, last fall. And, we are always hopeful, Todd will tell you, we're always hopeful we can find grant funds to cover everything. But we looked at it this year, we had $50,000, and I'll be quite honest with you, rather than try to set a 6-month contract up with CRA when we're in the middle of putting all of the contracts together for the actual design and removal of the dams, we wanted to give them a full year of funding to make sure they're in place, and they're going to continue with consistent management throughout this year. And I just want to also point out, I can't begin to tell you how much work this would be if we didn't have somebody like Todd, who's funded through Rotary, half-time, and CRA managing this project. It would be just an ungodly task for the county and the city to take on. And I hope, Mr. Chairman, there'll be a chance for Todd to talk a little bit about the funding.
So this was a planned-on expense, it was expected?
We knew that it was coming, but we didn't know when it was coming.
Okay.
But there's money in the budget that's covered under contractual line items.
Commissioner Gilman?
So we've gotten $3 million in grants towards removal so far. How much of that money's been spent so far?
Of the $3 million?
So we spent over $3 million, and really there's nothing that's been done other than the water's been lowered, and we've had a lot of meetings.
No, we haven't spent $3 million.
I thought he just said that.
No, you didn't let him finish.
Of the three, I'm sorry.
No, a very small percentage.
Okay.
Maybe a couple $100,000?
Yeah.
Would it be possible at all to actually, one time, just sit down and say, from point A to point Z, or whatever the end result is going to be, the dams are gone and everything's done, to actually make some kind of projection of what the entire cost is going to be? I mean, like line item everything, whether it be a study, a hydrology. Has there been a hydrology study at South Airport, for example? Is it sand? Is it glacial? I mean, these are things that I've been asking for at least consideration of. I mean, they say, I've been invited to go join your implementation meetings where I can watch you plan on taking the stuff out and then move to the next phase and then manage it so that you can come back to us and ask for another $25,000 or $20,000 or whatever it is at this point. You know, we're nickel and diming right along here. And the question hasn't even been answered. Really, what is the total cost of this thing going to be when it's all said and done?
Why don't you go ahead, Todd? Do you want to do it, or you want me to take a stab at it?
Sure, yeah, and that, you know, that's a good question. And we've received numerous cost estimates. The first cost estimate was put together by ECT, who was a consultant for the Boardman River Dams Committee, and they estimated that the total dam removal cost would be anywhere between $5 and $8 million. But granted, that was an engineering and feasibility study, so we didn't get into planning stages. That was a study to assess the pros and cons of dam removal, dam modification, and dam retention. And then since then, subsequently, we have had estimates provided to us, you know, refine those estimates through in-kind service of MacTech and also URS and also ECT, because we have to have fairly succinct cost estimates when we apply for these grants. So if you would like to see, you know, we'd be more than happy to show you any of the grant applications that we've submitted, like for the Great Lakes Fishery Trust grant that we submitted, you know, the $1 million one, and then the Fry Foundation grant. So the cost estimates for this whole project are in those grant applications. So if you'd like to see those, we'd be happy to share them.
The summary is here, but we can show you the individual grant. It's all broken out.
Really, what I want to see is I want to see a line item. I want to say, okay, we're going to be doing this study approximately this date or approximately this month or at the end of this year. Or we're going to look at what it costs to replace the bridge or move a road around Anderson Road or whatever the plan is. I mean, we need to look at the big picture of what it all affects, and not just the removal of the dam itself, but how it affects us as a county as well. I mean, the road system down there, for example, at South Airport, how is it going to affect that road down there if, for example, there needs to be, you know, because of the higher velocity water, if something needs to be done there, how much are we going to spend there, or are we going to have to seek grants for that? What about the bridge? You know, and the Cass Road Bridge. Now, we may have to replace that anyway, but the point is, what is the cost without, I mean, the entire the whole thing doesn't just affect the dams. And then there's the land issues, and you know, I just, I see it how it's being led down a little at a time to the point where we can't refuse this operating expense that's ongoing because, well, gosh, we've already got this much tied up into it. And I just don't agree with that particular type of way of going about business.
Well, if I could, I know you disagree with this project, Commissioner, but the county board on at least 2 occasions now has said emphatically we're moving forward with taking out these dams. So, you know, I don't think it's a matter of getting another foot in the door or moving another step and getting you boxed into a position. The county board has given clear direction. We're supposed to take out these dams, and that's what we're doing. Unfortunately, until we do, for example, the hydrology, we can't know what the impact on the road is. So until we're about another year down the road, we're not going to be able to answer those questions.
Why are we not doing the hydrology now, and why are we not getting an answer to that so we don't go down the road and spend another couple $100,000 and find out that we can't do it without spending another couple million? I mean, why are we not doing this?
Because we don't have $8 million right now to take out the dams, and so we have to do it a piece at a time. And while I know you're critical of that, I frankly think it's quite an amazing feat that we've been able to do this with so little local tax dollars in it. And frankly, you know, I'm kind of, it's just kind of mind-boggling to me that we're sitting here and we're kind of being criticized for this when we're doing something that I don't think has been done anywhere in this state, probably in the whole Midwest.
It shouldn't be done.
Well, I know you feel that.
And that is, but the thing is, it shouldn't be done. And I'm not just saying it because I like the dams. I don't care. What I care about is I care about the taxpayer dollars. I think we're going to wind up spending a lot more than what is being projected. Okay? And that's what I care about. I care about a wetlands area that's going to be taken out, or it's going to, you know, right now the water's down. You're already hurting it. Okay? You're making the process irreversible, and to the point that we have to actually do something in the end. You know, and it's going to cost us more.
Well, Commissioner, let me just suggest, with all due respect, that argument is not for Todd. That argument is with your fellow commissioners.
Yeah.
They're the ones who made the decision to move this forward based on the
If I could
information.
comment, one of the arguments that was used repeatedly during the time that we were making the decision of whether to remove the dams or not was, well, everybody claims that there'll be all this money available to remove them once you decide to do that, but, we couldn't, line up the grants and say, well, here they are, just waiting for us to ask for them. I mean, the whole thing has been, to a certain degree, a moving target, but the decision was made because we believed it was the right thing to do, and so far, what has happened has been borne, that has been borne out. We have come up with over $3 million of funding. We have spent very small amounts of local taxpayer money for the project. In fact, we've probably spent more in the ongoing expenses of dam maintenance than we have on what it's going to cost, what we spent so far to actually take them out. But the point is that we are making progress. It is coming together. It is a very complex project. It has been said several times that this is, one of the biggest dam removal projects, anywhere in the nation. To take out 3 consecutive dams at more or less the same time in a fairly populated area and make it work, I think is quite a feat. It's not just an engineering feat. It's also a feat of government that we can pull all the disparate pieces together and make it work. So, yeah, I wish we could say, here's the number and here's the pot of money, but it just doesn't work that way.
Well, I'm sorry, it's...
Well, let's let Dick weigh in, because he was waving his hand before.
Well, just one thing I heard, and one of them is the impact on the bridge on South Airport Road. There won't be any impact on the bridge at South Airport Road, because once the dams are drawn down, the river flows so many gallons per hour up above, and that's not going to change. The river's not going to get bigger. It's not going to get smaller. You're just taking the ponds out. And I can't see any effect on anywhere down below once the water is lowered.
Well, Dick's exactly right. The river is currently flowing at flow of river, and it doesn't make any difference whether the pond is there or not. All the water that's coming down the river is flowing through the river. I guess, we've had this discussion on a number of occasions. The fact is, we had a very public, open, 3-year process. All of the options were looked at, whether you keep the dams, whether you take out the dams, whether you keep the dams and produce hydroelectric power, whether you upgrade them, whether you put fish ladders in, and the decision was made to take the dams out. So any discussion to the contrary to that end is strictly negative force that we're just trying to go backwards. We simply have made the decision to move forward. We need to keep moving forward. And Ross is exactly right. They told us that money was available to take these dams out, and we've absolutely seen that come to fruition. We have $3 million that we didn't have 9-10 months ago. And there's more money coming. There's all kinds of other applications that are out there. We looked at the cost of maintaining the dams, we looked at in retaining them, and the decision was made to take them out. The decision is done. Let's move forward with this project.
Jason?
There's $3 million to take them out. There was an estimate of up to $8 million to take them out. We're looking at a federal government that's bankrupt. The grants are supposed to come from where? And we're moving forward with this. I understand what you're saying about, well, the water's going to low down and the flow is going to be the same. Well, then there's the change in what happens when we have weatherable situations. It would have cost us approximately $500,000 to repair the 2 dams that we're responsible for, just to keep them up. And we've got $3 million already to take them out. It just doesn't make any sense to me. It doesn't make any sense at all.
Rob?
I move the question.
Thank you.
Okay. Any further comments on anything? Okay, by roll call, please.
Commissioner Henschel?
Yes.
Limkul.
Yes.
Thomas.
Yep.
Max Bauer.
Yes.
Fleece.
Yes.
Wheelock.
Yes, ma'am.
Gilman.
No.
Inman.
Yes.
Richardson.
Yes. The motion carries.
Thanks,
All right,
Todd.
thank you, Todd.
Thank you, Todd.
Next, we have item C1, which is result-based budgeting.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is a long recommendation. I won't go through the whole thing. Just to reiterate, last fall, the county board told us to go through a program to solicit bids to do result-based budgeting. We went through a development of a bid specification that was two parts. First, a request for qualifications to look at the qualifications of firms, and then and that was done by both the management team and the county board. We held phone interviews, you'll recall. Many of you participated to talk to companies. We received 2 bids, and we talked to those companies, both the staff and commissioners, and we decided to invite both to present full-blown proposals, which they did. You've all received copies of those proposals. And just in summary, let me say that for a variety of reasons, we are recommending that the firm that does priority-based budgeting, which is the Center for Priority-Based Budgeting out of Denver, Colorado, be awarded the contract in the amount of $30,000 with up to $3,000 in expenses. We believe that this firm provides a formula that will allow for consistency once it's adopted, that will be able to go from year to year, from board to board. And we believe that the formula process that they developed and the way that they involve the public in the process, while different, we think it's probably the best fit for Grand Traverse County. Also point out that this proposal was significantly less than the other proposal. I want to say that we believe both proposals were good. Both proposals could work in Grand Traverse County. We just believe this proposal could work better and is more easily implemented. Now, Dean and I would be glad to answer questions. I wanted to say a couple more comments. First of all, we know that $33,000 is a lot of money, especially in this economy. We believe that it's an investment in the future. We know that this next year, based on what we saw yesterday in the equalization meeting, is going to be as bad or worse than what this year was, and perhaps this will go on for several years. We know that we have not done a good job of giving commissioners the tools that allow you to make good choices in terms of eliminating programs. And we've been working with a traditional budget that at first focused on expenses and now focuses on revenue, but still does not give you good information, the information that you need, both from the public and from us, that allows you to make good selections about what to eliminate. And we believe very strongly that we cannot continue to operate budgets using fund balances and moving forward. We believe that we're going to have to go in and cut programs. One of the difficulties with that, obviously, is our budgets are not set up by program. They're set up by department. And there may be 5 or 6, or in Fred's case, for example, maybe 20 programs that are operated in that department. And even in Fred's operation, he accounts in those programs for his part of the programming, but he doesn't account for facilities time and things like that other than through cost allocation. So we believe that a change is important, and Dean and I are 100% behind this. If you choose not to move forward, Dean and I will still do our best to try to implement some components of this, whether we ask you to do a citizen kind of evaluation in the upcoming months, but I can tell you this. Our plan is, we've already had discussions, our plan is to make programmatic cuts in the 2012 budget in our recommendation to you, because we just believe that has to take place now. We can no longer, as we've said for years and years, be everything to everybody. So again, our recommendation is to recommend to you that we do priority-based budgeting from the Center for Priority-Based Budgeting. Let me also say that if the board, and I put this in the letter, if the board determines that you're still not convinced, 2 more points. First, we're also recommending that you only do this if you all firmly believe in it and you believe it to be the right solution. everybody that we talked to, whether references or the two companies, said the same thing. If the county board isn't 100% behind this, it's a waste of time. We talked to a couple of communities who started it, went through the whole process, a new county board got elected, which you can't control, and they discontinued it after 3 years. That's just not, so this has to be a program that we plan on using for the long term. The second thing is if you're just not sure, but you're open-minded to the idea, another suggestion would be to bring in the company for a one-day session, spend a few $1,000s, bring them in, allow them to meet with you for as long as you want, allow them to meet with the department heads, the elected officials and judges, maybe the community, and and of course spend some time with Dean and the finance department to get a better understanding of this community and where we might go with this, and also to see if they can get you to a higher level of comfort. We think that that's a good interim step if you feel compelled tonight to say, no, we're just not going to do it. But we understand it's a lot of money in this climate. I know it's a very difficult decision. We just believe that it's a short-term investment for a very long-term, good, positive solution. And I'll answer questions.
Commissioner Fleece?
I would move that we not accept either one of the proposals, even though the low one could amount to $43,000. It's a lot of money. I believe this board's fully capable of budgeting in the correct manner.
Support.
Supported.
Henschel. Commissioner Inman?
As you know, I sat in on both phone interviews and did get a lot out of really the direction they were going to try to lead us into. And I guess I came away with the feeling that, number one, I think that the history of the Grand Traverse County Board of Commissioners and their budgeting processes, along with administration, has been excellent. And, you know, we've got, you're probably tired of hearing this, but, you know, we've built up a healthy fund balance. We've got ourselves up to 19% of our expenditures. We've got a AA bond rating. We're probably considered one of the strongest financially managed county in the state of Michigan. We've made some right decisions, not in every case, and we've taken and I understand we've taken a more of a less aggressive approach over the last couple of years on cuts, giving the somewhat of a benefit of doubt to the staff people that work here that, you know, we're not going to let you go unless it's absolutely necessary, and you know, we're going to give this a little time. Well, you know, time's running out. I'm not interested in taking the fund balance below 18% of our expenditures. And Dennis, I just wonder if, you know, without the expenditures of consultants, you know, what the two main things that I'm really interested in as one commissioner is, yeah, I'd like to make some better judgment calls on our budget and using you know, better tools. And I'm just wondering, without the use of consultants, you know, can we find a way to better engage the public either through, you know, the assistance of the college or other sources that would be less expensive, either through focus groups or surveys or whatever. And two, you know, whether we can challenge our department heads to begin to put together in their strategic plans how they can measure the effectiveness of their programming and dollars that they spend on the public, in terms of, are they getting the service that the service they're expected to get from those dollar amounts, and, you know, is it doing the job? We're getting their bang for the buck. So, you know, I guess the question I have for you, Dennis, and your staff is that, you know, over time, can we accomplish those two things without engaging into a consultant?
The answer to that is certainly we would do everything we possibly could to meet the board's needs in this regard. I believe that we could certainly get a citizen survey program set up this year before the budget. You know, whether we do it through surveys or focus groups, we could use John Syke to work on some focus groups. We could develop a survey, and so that, I believe, could be done. I think to do anything more than that with the limited staff that we have is going to be very difficult this year.
Okay.
And I really do believe the second most important step is not performance measurement. It's important. But before we measure it, we need to know what it is we're measuring. And I think that's where identifying the programs comes in. And quite honestly, I don't feel that we have enough knowledge or expertise in this particular area to get there very quickly. You know, you'll have to have great patience with us. We will do the best that we can if you decide not to move forward. But I do believe the second step is developing the programmatic cost. And some of our departments are well ahead of others in that regard. But
Just a quick follow-up. I mean, I didn't expect it to be done in 1 year, but, you know, I know that this is for the counties that have decided to engage in this thing. I mean, this is a 3-year deal, a 5-year deal.
Yep.
You know, you're not, this is a...
Well, just understand, if it's a 3 to 5 year deal, and I agree with you,
Yeah.
the counties that I talked to and reference checks have said it's a 3-year program. You might be able to get the basics implemented in 6 months.
Right.
But to incorporate it in throughout the county and to change the culture, it's a 3-year program.
Right.
Just understand, if it's a 3-year program to do it with the consultant, maybe it's a 6-year program to do it with us.
Right.
Just so you understand that.
All right, okay, that's fair.
Commissioner Max Power.
I really, really respect you, Commissioner Fleece, but I absolutely disagree with you on your motion. And this is going to certainly come as no surprise to my fellow commissioners. I firmly believe that we need to structurally change the way we budget. And I really believe $33,000 or $30,000 is such a small investment, and it is such a beneficial tool, not only to the finance director, but to the county administrator and to department heads. It will engage the public. We are going to be able to, right now, we fully cost nothing. Dean, is there anything in the county in those line item budgets that we fully cost?
No, and that's the nature of fund accounting and, you know, what the state tells us we have to do.
And this gives us an opportunity for $30,000 to change that and show commissioners and show the public what exactly we are spending and where their dollars are going. We do this in our personal lives every single time we walk into a store. We take a look at value. You know, some of us find value in a Mercedes sports car. Some of us are just looking for transportation. I strongly support this. Thank you, Dennis, for bringing this to us. Thank you, Dean, for supporting this. This is a board that spent, what, $15,000 on a study to determine whether we need a bridge or a tunnel, and we won't spend $30,000 on our budget? I just don't see it.
Commissioner Henschel, did you still?
Yeah, thank you. I agree with Commissioner Maxbauer on most of her points, that this would be a great thing. But it comes down to, I don't believe it would be implemented. We have a history in this county of getting studies that pretty much sit on a shelf. And I'll give an example. Here's one right here. We had a study about our security, and they had all kinds of big dollar things we could do, and they had one that didn't cost nothing. Everybody, wear your name tag.
You're going to shave us all, Rob.
Yeah, I know.
Almost all.
You know, what an example. We won't do something that's free, that's recommended to us, and we're going to go spend more money on these studies. I believe it would be a great program if everybody was enthusiastically behind it. But we've got possibly in a couple of years a board of 7 instead of 9. It could be a totally different board. We don't know. And this is a 3-year process, and I don't think it's prudent to spend $30,000 on something at this point that I just don't believe it'll happen.
Okay. Commissioner Wheelock?
Well, you know, we've spent the last 5 years talking about what programs we provide, how much they cost, and who they serve. You know, at least the last 5 years. We have been unable to identify that. This is what these consultants do every day, is they come in and they identify what services you're providing, what that service costs, and how many people they are affecting. And we have simply been unable to do that. So if $30,000 absolutely is a lot of money, but I don't want to be the one that makes the wrong decision about which programs we cut out and get rid of. You know, I remember having discussion a few years ago about the sheriff's department should eliminate road patrol because there's no statutory requirement to have it. Well, I'm guessing that none of us want to not have the sheriff's deputy show up at a car accident or stop somebody that's driving under the influence. So, you know, $30,000 is a lot of money, and I actually think probably the cost of this is, I'm assuming that we're going to recommend the $10,000 for the scientific survey, so it truly is $43,000. But I don't know how else we can possibly identify all of the programs we have. You know, we've went to every department head from one end of this county to the other and asked, what services do you provide? I sat here a year ago and heard the lady from MSU Extension complain about the 0 to 3 program, how the state cut out that funding. Well, we all scrambled around. We found $68,000 to fund that program to get us through that year. Well, when it all came down to, that $68,000 served 36 people. That's too expensive. We can't do that. We can't do this based on emotion and trying to figure out which programs are good and which programs are bad because we don't have enough information. That's what these people bring us. You know, we sent Dennis out to find us companies that could help us with this process and make the change, and he's done his part. It's our responsibility to do our part.
Commissioner Lemko?
I'm having a real hard time with this one. You know, I really don't want to spend money on another consultant. But on the same token, you know, I was out of being a commissioner for a couple of years, and I came back. And I'm probably more concerned about my responsibilities this time than I ever was before. I see some major budget cuts coming down the road, and I'm not sure how best to go about doing it. If we don't approve this, then I would at least want us to bring in the one-day group to be able to, for us to become more knowledgeable, more comfortable about what's really on this thing. You know, I really think we need to do it. I'm just not comfortable enough to know that, like everybody else has expressed, are we all going to buy into it? Is it going to stay there for a long time? Is it going to be the way we are doing business? It becomes our culture. How do we change the culture of our organization? This is a way to change that culture. I'm just not comfortable enough knowing that it's going to bring what we need to bring, and that's why if we vote this motion, then I would at least want us to be able to come forward and have them come in and do the one-day seminar.
Commissioner McFarland?
I want to respond to something Commissioner Henschel said. This is not a study. It is not a study. Please do not think that this is a study that sits on a shelf in a book, much like the wage and salary study. And I can, there's Resource Recovery Council studies. I mean, there are studies all over the place. This is not a study. This is a tool. These people are going to come in and they are going to structurally change the way we budget. They are going to focus on what is of value to our taxpayers. And rather than, and we do it, you know, when you have a reduction in revenue at your home, you know, you don't say, well, I'm going to just cut 10% from my mortgage, I'm going to cut 10% from my utilities and 10% from my entertainment. You don't do that. But that's what we do at the county right now. We take 10% out of the sheriff's department and 10% out of the county clerk's office and 10% out of all these other departments. This will stop that. And it will give us full costing information, which we have to have for $30,000. It's a bargain. And I have to tell you, if we do this, it is, I truly believe that our taxpayers 2 years down the road are going to thank us immensely. But if we don't, we don't.
Commissioner Inman?
Dennis, I guess the one variable on the recommendation that I don't have a comfort level with is the amount of administrative time to keep the ball going. I mean, these people aren't going to live here for the next 3 years. And, you know, based on some of your representation that I believe to be true is that, you know, we're operating under virtually a bare minimum staffing level at this point. Moving forward with this project, I mean, how do we, sure, they come in, they give us, a toolkit, but they're not going to be here every day making this thing happen. And, this isn't going to cost $30,000 plus 10. This is going to cost $30,000 plus 10 plus a full-time person for the next 3 years.
It wouldn't surprise It wouldn't surprise me that implementation of this would take in the area of 200 to 300 hours of time, staff time. I could be wrong on that. I tried to get that when we talked to references. But, in both cases, both of these situations, they generally dealt with much larger community groups, whether it was states or large counties, that had, maybe 20 people in the finance department and a large staff and administration. So this is going to fall primarily on Dean and I, but then some component of it will fall on department heads and elected officials. So I know this much, and I'm sorry I can't quantify that more. It will take a significant amount of time. I believe that priority-based budgeting proposal will take significantly less time than the budgeting for outcomes proposal, because that one was clear. They were very clear with us that budgeting for outcomes was a 50-50 proposition. As much time as they spent, that's how much time we were going to spend. We asked the question of priority-based budgeting, and they said that because of the formulas they've developed and things, the demand on our time is less. But I still think it would be unrealistic to think this would be less than a couple of 100 hours anyway. Would you agree, Dean?
I agree.
No. So one final question, if I may.
Certainly.
So in essence, does the proposal, as recommended, basically just cover the cost of the surveying and
their time,
their information in terms of how they would recommend each department measure
absolutely
going forward? And that's
it
basically what you're buying for.
If you looked
30.
at their proposals, I gave you their proposals are really extensive. I mean, but it will take time because we set up subcommittees, we set up peer groups, which are departments that meet together to look and kind of review each department's assessment of where they fall in your strategic plan and how successful they are in meeting your goals. So there's a lot of other time that's required to do that. So this is like everything else we do. If you direct us to do it, it will have to take priority over something else we do. That's just realistically how this will go. But I would tell you this, that the investment of time that we make in this now, I believe will save hundreds and hundreds of hours in future years. So, it may be a large investment now, but it'll pay dividends down the road. That's my feeling, both in your time, in my time, in everybody's time, because we'll have better information to work with.
And if I could just add to that, they will look at our current accounting structure, and a key piece with any of these consultants would be to determine, well, a starting step is identifying what your programs are, and they would have to help us define what is a program. And then looking at our current accounting structure, they will help us or provide us with a template to compile that cost information. And then there's also assisting us in how you objectively rank the programs. But we feel, and the reason for recommending the priority-based budgeting proposal is that it's a closer fit to what we have. It's not a radical change from what we're doing now, and we felt we would be more successful with that group than the budgeting for outcomes. But we feel we can, and Dennis is right, it will take an investment of our time, not only administration, finance, but our departments as well, because this will be a change for all of us. But it is something we need to do.
We want you to know that we really understand and respect how difficult a decision it is. Why I know you all feel very strongly about doing the best job you can with the budget. You're very judicious about spending money on it. So, we respect your decision. We just wanted you to know we feel strongly about this. We think it's a good idea.
Commissioner Fleece?
You know, I look at the people sitting at this table tonight, and I see 4, I'm going to call them old-timer commissioners, including Herbie, who's a newbie right now, but he was around for 12 years prior, and 2 administrators. And I don't know why we would want to pay anybody $43,000 to teach us how to budget when those 4 people plus the 2 administrators, when I came on this commission, had a fund balance of roughly $9 million. To me, that's pretty significant, and that's doing something right. The old adage, don't fix it if it isn't broke. Public input. $10,000 for public input. You know how you get public input? And perhaps, and I happen to agree with Chris, we shouldn't be looking at departments across the board swipes, 10%, 1%. We ought to be looking at programs and personnel. And when we publish whatever we think our decision might be, like, for example, we're going to sell half of the county parks to get some cash, well, let me tell you, it's kind of like when we were doing the dam study. This room was full, all the chairs out there were full, plus our phones were ringing. I think the board we have here, particularly with the guidance of the older commissioners and the 2 administrators since roughly 2002, we're in pretty good hands, and I know I've certainly learned from them in the past, and I think we can save the $43,000, and you're right, you have to make some hard decisions. But as far as public input, these studies are where they go out and solicit opinions. I think you're far better off just to publicize it, and let me tell you, we know exactly when we're going to have a controversial issue because we can't even get in this room. And the public, the silent majority, will certainly speak. And I think that's the way to do it. And you know what? That don't cost you anything other than cost the commissioners a little sleep because they got to sit here and the administrators and listen. But the public generally has some pretty good ideas.
Commissioner Gilman.
Well, I'll tell you what, you know, I attended the meetings. I've looked at the different ways that we can do things differently. Personally, I don't think the spending is it may or may not save us the money, save us enough money to cover it. And my concern is that we won't follow through as a board. In fact, I'm sure we won't follow through as a board. What I would recommend, however, is that we actually commit ourselves to spend the time to do what's absolutely necessary, and we zero-base this budget. And we put down everything, and we put down what it costs us, we put down what it gets us, we put down what the people, if they value it, they can come fight for it. And then we can look at the different ways that we can provide the services, whether it be out of our coffers or find alternate ways to provide the services. That's part of what they do. But we have to be willing to put the time in. We pay somebody $43,000 and then an ongoing cost to essentially do what we should be doing. I'm willing to spend the time. I'm willing to spend the weekends. I've been willing right along. I've never worried about getting out of here by 9 o'clock or 10 or midnight. If we have to talk about it, I'm willing to do it.
We need to talk about that, Jason.
He's one of those newbies.
I will tell you this. This has been a good exercise, though, and it's going to get us talking about different ways to provide services, and that's what we need to do, is we need to talk about those different ways to provide services.
Commissioner Newman?
Dean, is the offset to this proposal, I mean, are they going to give you a new software program to convert what you're doing now over to a different system where if we wanted to do that anyways, we'd be spending the 30?
It's highly unlikely that they would just hand software over to us. They would show us how we take our current accounting and budget information and basically convert that into a program costing mechanism. We would probably have to develop in-house a separate program accounting, cost accounting system. You know, our structure right now is based on the state's uniform accounts, which has been on the books since 1968. It's old, it's archaic, it doesn't fit well in a period where you have decreasing revenue sources. It gives you no means to evaluate value of programs, but it's just not an accounting system because it's also tied to a budget system. It doesn't give you that base of information regarding what it costs to run all of the programs and the services that we provide. So you can't take what we have now from our accounting structure and come up with a program cost. Fred is probably the closest example of a program type operation. You know, that's something that, because of the way his grants are set up, we have one mechanism in-house which doesn't capture all of our cost allocation plan, which helps us meet the requirements of federal grants, but it doesn't go far enough. So, no, we'd have to completely develop a separate accounting system, basically, to capture that program cost.
Follow-up question, if I may?
Go ahead.
Okay. So does that really mean that if we go with them, we're eventually, you're going to have to come back and say, listen, it makes more sense to go out and find a new piece of software. It's going to cost us X to do this thing right?
Let me take a stab at that. I'm going to tell you that we need to find a new piece of software no matter what. Dean and I have had this discussion a lot, and Dean in the past hasn't really felt that we need to change it. But how long have we had our accounting and finance system?
Longer than I've been here.
Okay, and it was developed in-house.
Let's not go there.
And I know there are better systems out there, but frankly, it's like everything else. We've held off on it simply because it's not that we can get it done, and it's not the number one priority. But there will be an ongoing, we will have to develop systems internally through the formulas that they give us to maintain consistency as we go from year to year. You know, there's another piece of it we haven't spent much time on, but I do want to just mention it because this will be controversial. Both of these companies, and I don't know if they talked to the commissioners about this, but both of these companies have told us the same thing. That one of the things, that you can't just, obviously you just can't go in and look at programs and decide what programs cost and then just decide which ones are most important, because you have this little thing called mandated services.
Right.
That might be, you know, that we always say is 60% of our services or more. Well, both of these consultants will tell you they're not 60% or more. They're more like 20 or 30%. And it's the level of service is the issue. Now, we have a judge sitting here tonight. He might not agree with us, even though he should because he was a county commissioner, but he might not agree with us of what the serviceable level of the district court is. Okay? And I think it's real important to mention that because my experience here and every other county I've worked in has been the same. Commissioners do not like to go in and look at serviceable levels and get in those discussions with judges and elected officials. And that's a component of what will come here in addition. And they both were very adamant about that in our discussions with them. And so, you know, as you weigh whether you want to do this or not, I just want everything on the table. That's another aspect of it that from my experience, tells me you may not like, okay? And some of the elected officials and judges may not like because that could be a contentious process.
Can I ask a question? Which part of this proposal, you know, the PBB one, do you think will be of most value to you and Dean?
The most valuable one to Dean and I'll speak, and then Dean may have a different one. I believe it's the development of the programmatic costs, and then I would say, secondly, the performance measurements. Those are the two that I think would be most useful to Dean and I. What do you think, Dean?
No, I agree. If we had the means to quantify what it truly costs for our programs, and then if we had some way to measure, that would give you the base information you need to make resource allocation decisions.
Now, if you ask me what's most important to you, I don't mean to tell you what's most important to you.
No.
But
that wasn't my question.
But Well, let me tell you, can I tell you what I think is most important?
That was my question.
Okay. I think what's most important to you is the assessment of the public's, of what's important to the public. I know, Commissioner, that you said you know that, but here's the problem. Remember 2 or 3 years ago when we did our strategic planning at the Civic Center? Okay? What we had there was this, 100 people in the room, 70 of them were there to lobby for parks, because someone made an effort to get those people from parks there. So you're going to get every constituency, I promise you, everything you try to cut out of this budget, there will be a constituency in front of you. And I don't agree, with all due respect, I don't agree that you'll hear from the general public. You're going to hear from the constituency groups. The only way you're going to hear from the general public is if you get this information out to people. Quite frankly, well, I was having a discussion with one of the commissioners, I can't remember which one of you, Commissioner Max Bauer, I think. I think it's not even, I don't think most of the general public really know what counties do, other than the 2 or 3 programs they come in contact with. So to expect them to come in and rally for a program, they probably know very little about it. I think they need to be educated, and they need to have that. So I really think, because we've seen it every time, unless the county board says, we're promising ourselves right now, we're not going to spend any fund balance, we're just going to live off the revenues, which is what we tried to do last year. Unless you promise yourself and you do what Commissioner Gilman says, lock yourself in a room until you balance it, the tendency is going to be to put more money back into the budget and keep programs, because I don't think you have the kind of information you need to know what's really the most important thing to the public, or what's least important to the public. I guess that's more to the point.
Commissioner Wheeler?
Well, I think that the exact point that I made earlier, and Dennis just alluded to it, first, we have no possible way, and Dean talked about it, we have no possible way of actually determining what the cost is of the programs that we operate. We don't have it in our accounting, we don't get it from our department heads, we don't break down our budgets by what programs we're developing. Fred can remember, and some of the rest of you that have been here, we sat here probably 10, 12 years ago and had a discussion one evening about possibly eliminating the animal control.
Ooh.
We had this place packed so bad you couldn't even stand up in here because we talked about eliminating animal control and not having it. You want to talk about special interest groups? There it was. How many people really ever have contact with animal control? But the moment someone made a comment publicly that we were considering it, we packed this building so full they couldn't hardly get off the elevator. And you start talking about making the types of cuts that we're going to have to make in these next few budgets, and you're going to affect a lot more people than ever had contact with animal control. I'll guarantee that.
Commissioner Thomas?
Well, you say this is going to take about 3 years to
fully implement.
So are they going to be back next year for another 43,000? Or
No.
this
No.
is a one-shot deal?
Yes. But once they give us the basics, then it's up to us to develop and implement. The point is that while some departments, I use Fred as an example, or District Court has several programs in their department, Fred may only take a week or 2 to figure out and figure out where the programs lie in his department. We have other departments that it's going to be an education process. It's going to take time. And we have some departments that probably won't even want to participate, and we're going to have to kind of, bring them in. So it's going to take several years. That's what everybody has told us. And I want to also say this. When this was, the references that I talked to all said the same thing. They didn't necessarily implement every aspect of this. Some aspects they may have changed, or some things they may have done differently than what was recommended. So, you got to kind of tailor it, and but it takes a good 3 years to get it in place.
Okay. I was going to call the question, but
I'll call the question.
well, I'm sorry. Let me call on Mr. Henschel first, and we'll go from there.
Just a couple of questions come to mind. First of all, if we moved forward with this, where would the money come from?
Well, we recommended that it come from contingency. You have a $75,000 contingency.
Okay. And you mentioned a one-day study option.
Yeah.
Could you expound on what that might look like?
Well, what I would do is I would propose to them that we pay their actual costs. to come out here for one day. I would envision that they would come and spend perhaps the first hour to 2 hours with the County Board of Commissioners and invite all the department heads and elected officials to come in and do a general presentation of what this program is like. Many of you saw the video, so you have an idea of that, but they would do that and they would answer your questions. Then I would say they would probably spend another hour with the commissioners if the commissioners wanted to, because you're the most critical piece to this being successful. Then they would spend time visiting the departments, going over budget information with Dean, and then at the end of the day, I would probably recommend the commissioners come back and talk to them one more time to get their view of what their assessment is after they've talked with the departments and how long they think and how it might be implemented. So that's how I would kind of structure the day, but I would look to them to give us advice, because they've done this other places, of other things they would like to accomplish while they were here.
Dennis, if we were to spend $43,000 on this plus your time, how certain are you that we would get at least that much back in maybe saving a program that is outlasted its usefulness, or finding something?
I think there's no question that we would save this amount of money. I'll be honest with you, if you tell me go save $500,000, we're going to save $500,000. So it's going to happen. I really do believe there's no choice. We have to save money. If the question is, will we save money that we couldn't save on our own, which is another good question, I think the answer would be we can save it on our own. I just don't think as strategically and maybe as efficiently as what we could do if we had a formula-based program. But we'll save it. It just may not happen as quickly as it might if we had a system. I'm going to tell you the thing I loved about this system, and some of you who saw the video may remember this. After you go through this whole thing of identifying programs and then determining what the value of those programs is in meeting your strategic plan, which is developed after you talk with the citizens and you know kind of what they think is important, what you do is you put every program into a quartile, 4 quartiles from highest priority to lowest priority, and you put the programs into these quartiles according to how they meet your strategic plan and what the citizens want. And then what I do is just this example, we come to you before the budget. You've already identified what programs are in what quartile, and then I say to you, this year we're going to bring in $38 million. Last year we brought in $39 million. How do you want to allocate the money to the quartiles? This is how I develop the budget. And then you tell me, you say, well, this top quartile, we want to spend 40% of our money in this, because these are the most important programs, and we want to spend 30 in quartile 2, and we want to spend 20 in quartile 3, and I haven't added it up in my head, but maybe it's only 10 left, 10 in quartile 4. Then we go back and we work with those departments, and if there's no money, programs leave. You could imagine most programs fall out of quartile 4. And that's how, so it gives us some better advice based on what you feel is important. And then you can go back and you can tinker with it. You can change it around. Well, we're going to do it a little bit differently. But it really kind of gives you a tool that is good and consistent year after year after year. The other thing it does is when someone comes into you and says, hey, I'm getting a federal grant for this. Here's a new program. The very first thing you tell them before you accept the grant is, run it through the peer process. We want to see how that fits with our strategic plan. And then you tell them, okay, we're willing to do this. Or maybe you say we're not, but maybe you say we're willing to do this, but understand, that's a 4th quartile program. Has a very low priority with us. If you can't keep funding going for it, either from that way or, as Commissioner Gilman said, from the private sector or a not-for-profit who's willing to take it over, that program's likely to go away.
You said there's a video?
Yeah.
I was at all the meetings.
No, this was back last, probably September, October. We'll get it for you.
Oh, so this goes back farther than I know about.
Yep.
Okay.
We've been talking about this for quite a while.
I haven't seen the video yet.
Yeah, I'll get the video again, and I will make it available to the new commissioners.
Do you have the motion read?
Well, Dennis,
Yes.
we've charged you with running this county, and if this is a tool you say you need, I'll go with you on it.
Okay. If we could just read the motion on the floor.
Moved by Flea, seconded by Henschel, not to accept either proposal.
Okay. By roll call vote, please.
Commissioner Limcool?
No.
Thomas?
To not accept either proposal. That means we're going to have another motion.
Exactly. So assuming this one fails, there'll be another motion, yes.
No.
Max Bauer?
No.
Fleece?
Yes.
Wheelock?
No.
Gilman?
Yes.
Inman?
No.
Henschel?
No.
Richardson?
No.
Motion failed.
Did you miss Lemko?
No, he
voted.
You were first, okay. That's right. I'm sorry, I'll entertain a motion.
I would move that the county accept the proposal for priority-based budgeting from the Center for Priority-Based Budgeting in the amount of $30,000 with up to $3,000 in expenses, and further recommend that $10,000 be allocated if identified as a need by the consultants for a countywide scientific-based survey of citizens' needs.
Support.
Okay,
Who
support.
supported?
Wheelock. Commissioner Thomas?
Mr. Bott, you're really in favor of this?
Yes.
And you don't feel that it's a kick in your teeth for all the good work you've done all over the years?
Absolutely not. I'd like to be able to tell you that I can give you the means and the ability to evaluate all of our departments. I simply can't do that. And I don't think that's a bad reflection on the work that any of us do at the county.
Well, Dennis knows what I told him about this.
Okay. Commissioner Lemko?
Yeah, I totally support this except for the $10,000 for doing a survey. These people are out of town. We have a college right here that can do surveys.
No, the $10,000 is a set-aside for using a local firm
Oh,
to
good.
do the
Okay.
survey. The only difference would be,
But they set the
they set the parameters.
Parameters, okay.
But the 10,000 is just a placeholder. You know, one of the things this company proposed was to actually do citizen charrettes, where they would come in and they do the thing where they say, if you had $500 and here's all the services the county provides, allocate the $500 the way you'd like it spent. So they would be involved in that
Okay.
aspect of it if you chose to do that. But I think what they would have to do is bring you back a proposal on the citizen
Okay,
input
okay.
thing. But if we were going to do a survey, we would use somebody like NMC to
Okay,
do that.
good.
Commissioner Fleece?
I've got a couple questions. Number one, where's this firm out of?
They're a not-for-profit out of Denver, Colorado. They are affiliated with ICMA, International City Managers Association.
I got some lumps Monday based on the personal property audit firm that we authorized equalization to hire. It's a North Carolina firm. And they wanted to know, with so many people in Michigan being out of work, why would we go out of state? And here we're going to do it again. That's one reason I would vote no on this. The second reason I would vote no on this is in 2006, this commission authorized a study, a wage study, for $190,000. That wage study came in 6 to 9 months late, and to this date, still hasn't been implemented, probably never will, because now it's old hat. It's 3 years old. Number three, another reason I wouldn't vote for it is I don't need a crutch to say no. And as far as I'm concerned, it's just a crutch to say, well, it really wasn't up to me. The study said that. So I'll be voting no on this proposal.
Commissioner Raymond?
Dennis, can you remind me if this gets approved and goes to the board and gets approved, what the timeline would look like? I mean, are we looking at we're not going to be able...
This is not going to be completed for 2012 budget.
It would be
It will
013.
it will begin, some components of it will be done for
Some
the 2000.
components of it in 213.
That's correct.
So we're still going to be making, in essence, some structural, difficult decisions
Yeah.
for the remaining part, perhaps, of this
That-
year.
that is true.
And all of next year.
That is true.
All right.
Commissioner Gilman?
Well,
I have to agree with Commissioner Fleece. I mean, we're hired to say no. I mean, that's why we were put here. I mean, not necessarily just to say no, but we were hired here to be able to say no when appropriate. Although I may have been sent here to say no. But we rely on the advice of our workers, of our administrator and our administrative staff. And as long as we're getting accurate, truthful information, I think we should be able to make good enough decisions on our own. I'd prefer to look at the budget if we have to, piece by piece, and take it upon ourselves to assess the value of each program as it's brought up, and essentially build it from the ground up. I don't think we need to spend more money to have an excuse, as Commissioner Fleece suggested.
Have we exhausted this subject? Oh, no, I guess we haven't. Go ahead.
I'm sorry, Commissioner Fleece kind of prompted another question. What, do they offer any guarantees at all?
Seems to me during the interview, they offered a guarantee.
That was the other company.
Oh,
The other
that's
company said they wouldn't take the money if we weren't satisfied with the work product. This company doesn't offer that, but this company has said that they will work with us until we are satisfied. That's what they've said.
Okay.
Let me just throw it, if I could, Mr. Chairman, could I just, I feel it's important to say this. I have a feeling this is going to go down to be a 5-4 vote or a 6-3 vote, one way or another. I have no idea which way it's going to go. I guess I want to pose to you the question. I don't have the answer to this. Is that something that gives us a solid enough resolve that we know that the commission is going to back this all the way through the process? I feel I'm obligated to pose that to you, because if this is 5-4 and we move forward and there's not a real feeling of support for it, and you asked me, I would say that it's not worth doing if there's not that level of a really strong commitment on the part of the board. So I say that with all due respect. I just think it's important to get out
If
there.
I can comment on that before you, Jason, 'cause I would also like to comment on your comment about you're willing to do the work. And I think that's true, and I think most of us are willing to do the work as well. But, I mean, this is a tool that creates information that we don't otherwise have. I mean, at some point, the decisions of what gets funded, what doesn't get funded, comes down to the 9 of us, and we're obviously not going to agree on everything. It's not like, you put it in the sausage-making machine and turn the crank, and out comes a product. You go, oh, there it is, we're all done. It's not going to be that simple. But I do think this will be a valuable tool, and obviously, if we vote for it, Dennis, I think we will want to utilize the tool to make better decisions. Go ahead, Jason.
That's pretty much what I was going to say. I mean, ultimately, I'm willing to work, whether it be with what we should be doing or whether we go this route.
Yeah.
And so I don't think that's going to be a problem. I don't think it serves any constructive purpose to not work with whatever plan we go on. However, again, I'd argue we're spending.
Right, I understand.
Yeah.
Okay, Commissioner Wheeler.
Well, I guess the only less comment that I would have is we have done everything with the tools that we currently have to try to identify these programs and what they cost. We simply have been unable to do that. If this gives us the ability to identify our programs and what those programs cost and who they serve, that makes it a lot easier to make the decisions. We simply have not, there's so many programs that all of our departments run, and we see department budgets, but we don't see program budgets, and therefore we are in an information void to choose which programs are important and which ones aren't. This gives us the tool to make it available to do that.
Mr. Redmond?
One last comment. I mean, this is one that I really struggled with. And, coming right down to the end, walking in here, I wasn't sure which way I was going to vote on this thing. I certainly wasn't going to vote for the first one at $90,000, but, this particular process that we would be looking at in 2013, 014, and 015 is probably going to be pretty valuable at that point in time, because I think in 011 and 012, I think we're going to be poised and positioned to make those structured, what we believe to be the best decisions to align ourselves with not pulling from fund balances in the assumption that, assessed values are going to continue to drop over the next 2 years. So, 011 and 012, we're going to be sitting in this room doing it the old-fashioned way. And hopefully we can find ourselves at a base level after that, we can use this tool if revenues go up, or we can use this tool if revenues go down. It goes both ways. So I'm willing to vote for it.
Okay. The motion is to approve the contract with priority-based budgeting in the amount of $30,000 plus, I guess, $3,000 in expenses, with $10,000 possibly used for a survey, a scientific survey at a later date if it's deemed to be needed. We'll do it by roll call, please.
Commissioner Thomas?
I knew you'd start with me.
In order.
You got the short chair.
We planned it that way.
I'll tell you what, you're going to have to prove it to me. I'm opposed to spending this kind of money on something that we've been doing what I think is a good job on over the years, but in as much as Mr. Bott is happy, I'm going to vote for it.
That's a yes?
It was a yes.
That was a yes. Quick before he changes his mind.
Max Bauer?
Yes.
Fleece?
Absolutely no.
Wheelock?
Yes.
Gilman?
No.
Enman?
Yes.
Henschel?
Yes.
Lemkool?
Yes.
Richardson?
Yes. Okay, motion
Okay, 17.
carries. Okay, which now brings us to
They better prove it to me.
They will.
You got your work cut
updates
out for
on boards and committees.
Well, Mr. Chairman, Chris Kramer is recommending that the chairman appoint an ad hoc committee to review the applications and hold interviews for CMH, Parks and Recreation Commission, and EDC, where we have vacancies.
Okay, you're asking me to make the appointments?
I think it's the chairman
Or
of the board
Chair
who
of
makes
the
it.
board makes the appointment.
Yeah, but
Okay. So basically, I'll take volunteers, and Larry, I guess you'll pick from the volunteers, right?
Whatever. I mean, I thought the committee chair made those appointments. I'm fine.
whatever the board's comfortable with. I thought it was the chairman of the board.
Well,
but-
hopefully we can reach a consensus on that.
There you go.
Not be
Yeah.
fighting over who gets to be
How
on
many
the ad
committees
hoc.
are we looking for? One to do them all? or-
Three.
We're doing
We'll do
3?
them all.
Yeah,
You want three separate?
No, put them all in one committee.
One committee?
that's-
Okay,
that's a
so I'm
lot.
looking for 4 people?
I will.
Okay.
Could you, I'm sorry, this is going real fast by me here.
Okay, what this is
Summarizing
an
it.
ad hoc committee to interview candidates for vacancies we have on 3 boards, Northern Lakes Community Mental Health,
Okay.
Parks and Recreation Commission, and the Economic Development Corporation.
Okay.
I think in all cases it's because of resignations that we've had that have created vacancies.
All right, I'm interested in those.
Okay?
Me too.
Commissioner Max Bauer? I'll volunteer.
I'll do it. So we got the 4.
Okay.
Which
And
4
you?
do you have?
No,
Instead of me.
I quit.
No, it's all 4 of us. We'll just do 4. You, me.
Well,
Max
no, we
Bauer.
have Lemkool,
Yeah.
Henschel, you,
And Max
Max
Bauer.
All
Bauer.
right,
That's 4.
that's fine. All right.
4? Okay, that's fine.
That's
Do it.
okay, all right.
I quit volunteering when I
Which
got
one?
in the Army.
Okay, we have,
Gotta
here's
step
what is
back.
being proposed. An ad hoc committee of Commissioners Lemkool, Henschel, Inman, and Max Bauer, with Lemkool to serve as chair, to review applicants for Northern Lakes Community Mental Health, Parks and Recreation Commission, and the Economic Development Corporation. Do I have a motion?
So be it.
Support.
Okay, support by Max Bauer. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. This brings us to the administrator's update.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As you requested in the strategic planning sessions, next week, Dean and I will provide you with revenue projections for 2 years, for 2012 and 2013. Obviously, after we got the information yesterday, now we're finishing those things up, and we'll have those projections ready for you and ready to discuss them next week. So we wanted you to know that. I was going to talk about how we've started the budget process, but you jump-started the budget process, so we'll pass that. But we're in our process now. We're working on that, putting that together at this time. I just wanted to congratulate the board. This past Friday and Saturday, I was asked to go to be at Alma College to sit on, to present on a symposium panel for the new president's inauguration, but it was a community symposium for Friday and Saturday, where they wanted us to talk about community collaboration and working together to get things done, finding ways to use resources better, and they asked me to speak along with some other people because of the reputation of Grand Traverse County. And so I just wanted you to know that I did so. There were probably 250 people in the room the first day, and then the second day where they held charrettes, there were probably another 100 people. And I just wanted, I guess, to compliment you as a board, not only for your involvement in the grand vision and actually for starting that, which you did, but also for your involvement in implementing services after that. When I talked to the people in the first symposium, and I talked about the fact that this county board had followed the lead of the Economic Development Corporation and established a new reuse policy for economic development, whereby you will use your dollars for economic development, and I already warned him about this, so he's okay, he understands. Where you're using your dollars in a 5-county area, and that you in fact made a loan already outside of Grand Traverse County. I cannot tell you how many people came up to me after that and were just amazed and wanted to know how the county board could be so forward-thinking in terms of looking at that and seeing this as a regional issue. And I just wanted you to know that they were just absolutely amazed and had nothing but praise for you for what you did, and had said never heard of such a thing. And I just think it was a real tribute to what you did, and frankly, I don't think you've gotten the credit you deserve for taking that step. So I just wanted to congratulate you. And then to tell you also that I got up the next day and there was an article in the newspaper, and it was a positive article about Grand Traverse County. Actually, it was at Alma College, so you know
it wasn't a local.
Yeah. It was not local. It was local there, but that doesn't help you. But anyway, people down there now know about what you've done, and I was very proud.
Did you wear a tie, Dennis?
Pardon?
Did you wear a tie?
I had to wear a suit.
Ooh.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Next, I wanted to tell you that I met with the sheriff last week to work on the cross-deputization project with the tribe. Commissioner Gilman and Commissioner Inman have served on that committee with us, and you know, while I don't expect the agreement to look like what the tribe would like it to look like, it's a negotiation, and so I told the sheriff, put together what they can live with, and then my intention would be to sit down with Commissioner Inman and Commissioner Gilman and the sheriff and kind of talk through that so we're on the same page, and then perhaps bring it to you, and then meet with the tribe. Also, in regards to the tribe, we've had some discussions, and they're talking about having a joint meeting between the county board and the tribal council again. We're thinking sometime this summer, perhaps, where we would get together and just, you know, maybe spend a couple of hours or an afternoon even, just kind of talking about things we can work on together, and Commissioner Gilman and Inman and I will be working on that and trying to develop something. So wanted you to know that that's kind of in the works too. Concerning Brown Bridge Dam, the City Commission will be acting on the contract for Brown Bridge Dam, or be considering it in the next 2 weeks. The approval of the contract with the MacTech team. The scope of work is now complete, and has been the price has been negotiated down as well. In terms of labor negotiations, we now have approval of the corrections contract, so we will be bringing that to you probably next week, so we can explain it to you in a closed session, and then for action at the end of the month. We're still working on contracts with the sergeants and the circuit court, And beginning at June or July, we will start negotiating for the one contract left, which is the deputies, which expires at the end of this year. So, wanted you to know that. Yes, sir.
Did you look at one of the issues that I had brought up as far as collections?
We have not done that in those contracts because we were already past the time, we were already past the proposal time, and we were negotiating on the limited proposals we had before us. So it was not, it could have been considered not bargaining in good faith to bring up an issue like that. But with the next contract, that would be something that we'll talk with the board about, and if given direction, then that would be something we would start with the deputies. Lastly, I wanted to let you know that Ross Childs called today. He and Chuck Korn, the supervisor of Garfield Township, met and testified at the legislature today about changing the legislation to expand the number of members that could be on the Board of Public Works. They wanted me to express to you that passed the committee and is now moving to the next phase. And so that's one step forward, I guess.
It's proper representation.
That's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
Well, while you're on the subject, Blair Township voted to pull out of the BPW last night.
Did they last night?
Oh, bad.
Okay. Any other questions or comments for Dennis? All right, that takes us to unfinished business, and Commissioner Gilman, you removed the Victims' Rights Agreement from the consent calendar?
Yeah. Yeah, the only reason I pulled it was just, I had a question on, due to the very short time frame and for a timely return of the agreement of the state, it was signed and returned. Who signs that and who returns that?
I think Al Schneider, the county prosecutor, signed it and returned it.
Is this something that we are required to, required to act on it? And if so, could this not have come sooner so that we could have acted on it prior to him signing it and delivering it before we approve it?
I cannot tell you whether or not they received it in a timely manner and just did not forward it to us. I can tell you that in past, because I did not look specifically at this one, I can tell you that in the past there have been many occasions where we receive it and we have 15 or 20 days to sign it and return it to the state. So this would not be unusual that there was not time to get it to the board in a timely manner to get it signed by the end of the month, or before the end of the month. The deadline may be before the end of the month. But typically, they always try to bring that to you in a time for you to approve it and sign it. So, then we get into the issue of, is this, I think Al would probably argue whether or not this requires county approval to sign the agreement as an elected official, but there's no question it does require you to accept the grant and appropriate the amount of the grant. So it's kind of a joint issue, but I know he always strives to get it to you ahead of time.
Also, remember that this contract actually became effective last October.
Yeah, that's the other problem with these. Many times, these things start 6 months ago and we don't get the grant agreements till they're half over.
Yeah.
You can imagine the dilemma that puts us in. Often we don't know how much money we're getting.
Well, in a situation like this, and if you know that the grant has been applied for, could the county pre-approve the grant if it's given to us?
Well, you do because you approve submission of the grant, okay? But you don't know how much money you're going to get. It may be changed in the amount, and it does require your acceptance. So, I guess it points to a very interesting thing, why it takes them 6 months to get us a grant that is substantially the same as the previous years and the year before that and the year before that.
Commissioner Inman.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the 2010-2011 Victims' Rights Agreement as presented.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Our federal government was 6 months before they even had a budget. So do they even have?
That takes us to new business. Parks and Recreation Board budget?
Yes, the only reason I put this in here is as we take a look at our 2012 budget, one of the things that the Commission on Aging is doing is taking a look at the number of committee meetings that we're having, and we're going to attempt to reduce those committee meetings, primarily because there certainly is a cost of staff time involved. One of the things, and Commissioner Wheelock, you were not at the Resource Recovery Council meeting, but one of the things that they talked about was reducing the number of meetings that they are having. And I just wanted the board to be aware that, the Parks and Rec Board is $53,000 out of a $788,000 budget. And perhaps there may be a better way. And one of the things that is occurring right now is the Parks and Rec Board is meeting to discuss fees. And they're looking at a philosophy tonight over at the Civic Center. And they're getting that philosophy from Bend, Oregon. Bend, Oregon has 71 parks. They have 550 programs. The comparison to Grand Traverse County, well, there really isn't one, but their philosophy for parks fees is excellent. And 71 parks, 550 programs, they have 5 parks commissioners. And there are just often better ways to do things, and as we explore next year, let's talk about it, that's all.
So you're suggesting a smaller board, is that what it is?
I'm not suggesting necessarily a smaller board for Parks and Rec, although that may be what this board decides to do. But I'm suggesting let's take a look at all of our boards and be cognizant of the fact that when we have meetings every month, we are taking staff time. Can we meet every other month? And by the way, Bend, Oregon's board does not meet every month. And they have a wonderful park system. I just think we should have the discussion.
Is their board elected or appointed?
I'm not sure. I can't answer that question.
Because most of those type operations are elected park boards.
Commissioner Thomas.
Just as a point of order, things like this that we're not going to act on shouldn't go under new business.
Oh, well, I didn't stick it there. I
I
just
put
said
it there.
we put it on the agenda.
You put under new business what you want to act on.
Okay, any further comments on this item?
Report.
Okay, that now, let's see, the custodial contract, of course, is...
We tabled that.
Will be tabled, is pushed back to another meeting, and that brings us to the county health building presentation.
Yeah.
Commissioner Fleece.
I asked that be put on the agenda for tonight, and to give everybody, just to kind of bring you up to speed, if you will, or refresh your memories. Fred needed some more dental chairs, so we looked at enlarging his present building, and the cost on that's going to be roughly $2.5 million to remodel it and put an addition on and so forth. So then we looked at the Cherryland Mall, the Toms area specifically, about 30,000 square feet, and that might have been a good location. It would have been a good location, except it was taking some good taxable property away. And number one, it was owned by Wells Fargo, but it's tied up in a bunch of liens on the property that was going to take roughly 5 years to clear, so our option was to lease the property. We obviously didn't want to do that. So I think a couple weeks ago, I happened to be meeting with Jim Schmuckel, myself and another guy in some private business, and we got to the end and we're just shooting the breeze, and Jim mentioned this proposal of a brand-new health department building for less than the $2.5 million, which really piqued my interest. And he had some drawings, and I handed out to each of you tonight just a short synopsis of what's involved here. And I'd like to have Jim and Kevin Refit come up and just give you a short synopsis on what they're proposing. One of the questions that I'd received from three different commissioners, well, can we put this on our Lafreniere campus? And they're, I think, prepared to answer that tonight. They have been in contact with Fred and have sat down with him as to the interior design, what Fred needed. But anyway, I'll let them cover that. And I think this commission, if we decide to proceed with this, I think we talked earlier tonight about saving taxpayer dollars. I think we can do this maybe for in the 2-4 neighborhood, thereabouts, maybe a little cheaper. And the savings grace out of the whole thing when we're done is we now have a building on Garfield that we can resell. We can sell to somebody for offices, whatever. And I think that is excellent. Plus, we have a brand-new building that theoretically isn't going to need any maintenance of any kind for quite a while. So I think we need to look at this, and if any of you have any questions when they're done, feel free to handle them or ask them, because I would like to certainly see, and of course I've had the privilege of discussing it at length with Jim. I think this would really benefit the county and the taxpayer. Thank you.
Jim Schmuckel, 3347 West South Airport Road, and I am in real estate, but I happen to, in relationship to this deal, I am a co-owner of Hammond Commerce Center, and that's where this started.
Kevin Reffett, Peninsula Construction, 1125 Business Park Drive, Traverse City, Michigan. I am the builder and designer of the, I believe, the charter building that you went through, Larry.
Okay. All right. I'd like to just real briefly say how this started. Fred called me one day on a particular property, and subsequently I asked him if he'd be willing to go on a tour on any and all properties that might even fit what you needed for this project, including we were way over on US 31 South, we were on Barlow Street. I took him to all physical properties that would even possibly work for parking and or even a building that could be retrofitted. At that same tour, I took him into the charter building, which was about 5 days from opening, and so we could freely go through it, and it was 99.5% finished, because from what he had described, it met so many of the same needs. This was a 21,600 square foot building. It had offices and so forth all around the perimeter with windows, and it had interior areas like you have that Fred had given me the component sizes of these different activities that you have, the different business needs within your proposed building. And so it just struck me one day about putting this thing together as I do day-to-day work on projects, and that's my living. So I quickly looked at our Hammond Commerce Center, and right as you look at the site there, right at the very entry of Hammond Commerce Center at Lafreniere and Hammond, I've assembled two sites that both were supporting 15,000 square feet, and which would allow for a 30,000 square foot building. And I went to quickly done a site plan with a particular engineer I work with on a regular basis, and we designed both the site plan and the interior using the list that Fred has as needs for the new facility, or for a facility, even retrofitting your own. Well, then what happened was that I had no idea where the cost was going to come out in a sense, working it from ground up, other than the fact is that with the charter project already in place, and we had all the new figures already there, so much of it paralleled, all we had to do is make a few adjustments, and the site plan maybe isn't perfect, or I shouldn't say the site plan is probably very functional, because we even have a canopy, as I caught in some language, that we have, and that design in Hammond Commerce Center actually has this particular area that fits in perfectly for a canopy type appearance for the facade. So there's a lot of right things happen to just fall in place and fall into mind that put this together very quickly and what I considered rather easily. So then when we get down to the final dollar numbers, for example, the land cost, we were asking over $400,000 for the two sites at one time. Within this budget, we've put it down to as low as $300,000. It's part of the, tell you what the land cost is. And so from there, the rest of it, or as a total turnkey package, we proposed, I had sent Fred two memos. One was 2.4, and I said less than 2.5. And then another one, I said 2.5 4 or 5 and less than 2.5. This was a few weeks ago, and then Fred sent back just like maybe 10 days ago or a week ago, there were some other particular things or items that we weren't quite aware of. It was like the lab, the fairly elaborate amount of lab. How many feet was it? 30-some. Anyway, there's additional items that we weren't quite aware of, so that would have to be adjusted slightly. One of the other things is like if it was all brick building or block building rather than any steel on the sidewalls, the steel roof, which has got over, is it 30-year, what's the guarantee?
30-year warranty.
30-year warranty on the roof. We could, I think Kevin figured out real quickly when we were doing this, like maybe $35,000 that could be all block, and there would be no steel walls. So there's a few minor dollar figures that could change the outcome, but to match or upgrade the deal. But the idea I have, final thing is that if there's any interest, what I suggest you would do is go on a tour of the new charter building, which I have permission to do at any given time, and take your time and go through it. And I think you'd be amazed the quality, and Fred might speak of it. He was there, I think, twice to look at it. In Peninsula Construction, what happened, and it's the last thing, is that we teamed up together with a charter deal, actually showed charter the property, and they had shown a lot of interest in it, and then from there, I've worked with Peninsula Construction before, and we teamed up together and put the whole thing together. And that's the same thing we intended to do here in that basin. So we're using the charter billing as a model.
I'm sorry, Commissioner Gilman.
How, I mean, you say there's some lab additions or equipment additions as far as the whole turnkey package is what you're alluding to as far as?
There was some just came about here in the last few days, just not big deals, but some, like the monolithic flooring on part of the building.
Okay.
It's a little more expensive, obviously, in slab construction.
And you're pretty reasonably sure you're still operating within the parameters, though, that we're looking at as far as 2.5, I mean?
Yes,
right in that
it's
area.
very, very close.
We're not sure.
We're not sure.
No. In fact, when Commissioner Fleece brought this to our attention, the letter that he speaks of that came from Fred really came so that we could analyze, and you all have a copy of it, so that we could analyze and make sure that we were looking at apples to apples on this project. And frankly, we didn't send this to him so that he could, look at these, and although we don't have another cost based on this, but this was to get an idea. This is things that are in our proposal at the present site that we want to make sure are in that proposal at the $2.5 million number. So we're really looking for information to be able to answer Commissioner Fleece's question, are we talking apples to apples, if we're going to compare price. So that's kind of what we're trying to accomplish here.
Commissioner Lemko.
Yeah, I think one of the issues that came up was the internet connection as to what was going to cost us, and I don't see any question here as to that we have a direct cabling, apparently, that when we were looking at moving to Tom's, there was a...
We have not done our analysis, Commissioner.
Okay,
Right.
so that's not in this situation?
I don't believe so.
The other question I would ask is that, is this one of those things that we get a proposal like this, but we also then tell you that we have to go out for bid? And I think, for the county, I think with this kind of a size, we would have to go out for bid on this kind of a situation. So I just want you to know that, that would be part of our thing.
There's no question.
No question about it. My big question is why aren't we using the land that we currently own on Lafreniere? I think that's a key component, because we spent a lot of money buying that land, and for us to leave it empty and to go someplace else, it wouldn't be prudent on our side, as far as I'm concerned. But the other question I have is, I've worked a lot with Peninsula Construction over the years, and I'll tell you what, they are excellent contractors. When they tell you they're going to do something, I've seen Ron pull stuff out that didn't suit him and start all over. So they get a good reputation. But what about the possibility of a buy-sell leaseback? Have you talked about doing something like that? So that we wouldn't have to bond or do it, that we could just do a buy-sell leaseback type thing.
That's a high probability. That's what we did with the charter building.
That's what I'm thinking, is that we might want to look at
We
something
have
like
other
that.
buildings in Hammond that we have the same thing.
Well, but could we do that on our own property?
Maybe.
I just, we have to think outside the box here and just
Yeah.
think about how we, because I really think it's really important if we even decide to do a no building, if we go off the site for our county property, I think we're making a mistake.
The one issue with the lease buyback is typically we can get money more cheaply than what they can. And so it's often not cost effective for us to do it that way.
I think we just need to look at it.
Yeah.
Commissioner Raymond, did you have?
Yeah, I guess I had a question on the Lafreniere property versus the Hammond parcel. You have sewer and water
Yes.
dedicated to each one of those lots, and
We do not.
And we do not.
We would have to run sewer and water and road into that property. It's on the road, but when we looked at this and when the Plan Commission looked at location of it, this facility was best located towards the backside of the property, which would be near the residential area. And so we would need, whatever we do on that site, we need to put in sewer, water, and road.
But it's right out there at the road.
It is out there at the road, yes.
right out the road.
I think we had an estimate of $80,000 to put it in, but don't take that word for sure. That's what I recall last time we looked at the sheriff's facility.
Yeah, I mean, just so some of the board members that weren't here when we acquired the land, it was, the intent was to not only acquire the building that's there for other administrative, needs that we had, space needs that we had, but what we did is we took an opportunity and we had an opportunity and we seized it to buy, I believe, 20 acres adjacent to the property. And the feeling of the county board at that point in time was twofold. Either it was going to be a campus site where we could build a new health department building and sell the health department building on Garfield and just move it right next to the administrative building there. And I don't know if 20 acres would accommodate it, but it was also, a future site if we were going to ever have a new building and a new jail for the sheriff's department.
We determined that the site was significant enough.
Yeah, so I mean, there were some particular purposes from the board of commissioners back when we acquired the land that, we had kind of two-folded plans for that property. One is in future years when, if the health department needed to expand and if there was a health clinic coming in or VA clinic coming in, we can accommodate that expansion on that site, as well as, a new sheriff's office and jail, and that would be kind of another Grand Traverse County campus kind of setting. So, that was the purpose behind selling that property, or acquiring that property.
Commissioner Maxbauer, do you have something?
No, I'm just listening.
Well, I guess I have a couple of comments. I'm very familiar with Building C. I go there on a regular basis to the Fastenal office on that one corner. That being said, there's a lot of topography right here. If you're at the intersection of Hammond and Lafreniere, this whole campus, this whole site is down in the hole to your left.
Right.
If that matters or not to anyone, I'm just saying that it truly, you always get the idea that these awnings and these canopy type drive-throughs are going to be, at level. You're going to be looking at the roof of that building, when you're sitting at that intersection. I too believe that we own the Lafreniere property for a purpose, and I would, there's a lot of good things about this. I like the idea of a turnkey that we're done and over with, and when we're ready to make the move, we just move in and turn the lights on. I like that idea. But I really would like to talk about, if we're going to talk about a turnkey operation, we need to evaluate whether or not these concerns that Fred have are in this design. And obviously, we have to do a bid process. So do we do a design build and put that out for different options? Do we hire an architect to design what we think we want and then decide? And I've worked both sides of that coin, and I can flip a coin about which ones work best. You know, sometimes they work better when you've designed it, sometimes they work better with the design builds. So, you know, you can do whichever. But I personally would not be in favor of purchasing a piece of property to put this building on when we own property adequate to handle it. And, you know, the $80,000 to $100,000 it takes us to put in the infrastructure to the Lafreniere site is still a third to 25% to a third of the cost of purchasing this piece of property.
Commissioner Goodman?
Just to clarify, what was the cost of the property? What's the value of it?
300.
About 300,000, okay.
I just make one comment. Maybe one of the short-term thought would be, we have like, what, 30-some page specifications that was done on the charter building, and when I looked at Fred's, or Kevin and I looked at them, those specs are in there, and probably, who knows, 85% of the specs are already part of what you would want. So for a feasibility part of it, you could compare what is being offered as a model to what your needs are and see the discrepancy to know whether you even want to proceed. I mean, that would be a quick way to do it, because, I mean, what are you going to do with a spec? If a spec says this and that's what's there, it says the lighting is all there and it says all the air conditioners, what tonnage and all that, you don't need to go back and recreate the wheel at that point. You just need to confirm that that's there and that's what it is, and see if there's any discrepancy in your needs. And that would tell you whether financially, you know that Peninsula Construction can do it for what we're saying. So somebody can do it better, well, maybe so, but at least you know where you're at going out the gate.
Well, and I truly believe that you're right in that the HVAC is all going to be very similar, the lighting is all going to be very similar. Obviously, the utilities, the water and the sewer are going to be significantly different in these
Infrastructure.
lab-type rooms as far as the internals, interior stuff. But that's truly not a significant piece.
We allocated for that.
You know, I think we're okay with that. You know, there's an allocation in there for it. But, you know, I certainly believe that I hate to delay this project because I know that the health department's bulging at the seams and needs space.
Well, clearly,
but I guess I'd like to hear from Fred whether thinks this is viable, or if we should, you know, we've already spent a couple months from when Fred and I first met with this 2 years ago, probably pretty close. You know, when we first started talking and we found these old prints for the addition on the health department building. So, you know, it's been a long time coming. You know, when the capital improvement committee looked at it the first time, it's got to be close to 2 years ago.
Right,
You want my
there was some
comment?
comments?
More.
Well, first of all, is that when we had our last meeting, I believe was that Ways and Means? Is that I asked, Jim had Herb, after the time thing didn't look good, you said to Katie, could Fred go out and look at one of these buildings? I went there and there was his real estate sign there, so I called him and he took me on a tour, as he said, very nice. And then he showed me that building, and it is quite nice, the charter building you referred to. So I suggested he put something together and come to that meeting, because somehow he didn't get your attention or something or other, and he didn't have a chance to speak. And so we went ahead at that meeting to go ahead with doing the addition of the building in lieu of a new one. And a couple of things to say is, one, it's good to have this debate whether we're going to have a building or not, because we really do need to do something, because a lot of the mechanical is getting really old, and it isn't just space, it's the age of the building, the roof is going to have to be redone, so something's got to be done. I think that it's tough. It's just like when you've got a car that, you know, you're going to put more money into it, or you're going to buy a new car, and it's one of those decisions. I guess that's as much as your purview as anything. What I would like to say is that we're now $45,384 into architect's fees, and that's coming out of my fund balance, and it's going to really going to mess up our inflate our overhead costs. You understand? Because we have to account for that money, not just to you folks, but to the state and the feds as to how we spend it. So, I mean, we can't just keep doing it. So if you're going to make a decision, I think it's up to you. you want us to go into the new building, then I think that we should have the architect work on that concept, be it with Peninsula or whomever you want to bid it to, and move ahead, because we put a lot of staff time into what needs we need for the building, both in space and plumbing and so on and so forth. And I think that list that I came up with is probably just a starting point, or fix up the other building. I mean, we kind of need a decision here, because, you know, if you said tonight, let's go for a new building, we'll make it work. I mean, we'll stick in there as best we can and try to make that happen, and I'll work with the dental clinic with that. But I just think that it'd be good to kind of like make a decision and stick to it. If that's my two bits. You know, the architect, I mentioned it to this thing. I mean, you know, he's put a lot of himself into the redesigning this building. He said, well, it's an airplane hangar, and you're just going to put stuff in it. But that's also true of the Tom's building. I mean, you got a big area, and you just fill it up with rooms. And the preliminary design that he had wouldn't exactly fit what we need, but I understood the concept. But, you know, like the Charter building has carpeting throughout, as I recall, except for maybe the very back and so forth, and we don't want carpeting in a lab or where we're getting immunizations. There's got to be something that's easily cleanable if there's a spill or blood or whatever, or kids do throw up and things like that. So, I mean, it's got to be, it's a clinic, not an office, and so there has to be some amends in that regard. But still, like architects said, it's an airplane hangar. It's a big open space, and if you're just putting the right rooms in there and the right flooring. And there was a concern about storage, and then Jim said something on the phone. I was in Lansing yesterday on our day at the Capitol meeting with our legislators, and I was on cell phone with him, and he said something about maybe a basement in there for storage, because we needed a storage area for our files. Unfortunately, we're required by law to still keep a lot of paper files. So there'd be that. And the one thing I didn't say to him is, if we have a basement, we have to have an elevator. I mean, there's just a lot of questions that I think that have to be ferreted out. But I think that I think the real decision is your decision. You know, I just hate to say, you know, put 45 grand into something and have nothing. Because that doesn't mean that money's gone, because the architect has worked with us on our room spacing and ideas and so forth. So, does that help?
Well, I think this is really an important decision, and I realize what Fred's saying, but I don't care how much we spend on the old building.
It's going to be an old building.
It's an old building.
Yep.
And number two, most importantly, is regardless of the location, whether it's on our campus or the proposed, when Fred moves, it's turnkey, and we got that building to sell. And, you know, the times are down right now, but there's somebody that can use that building. And regardless of what we get for it, that's more than we had going the other way and still having the old building. And I think Jim, I think what I'd like to see happen is have staff work with these two guys and come up with whatever we need to do. And if we need to bid it, then let's get it done and bid it. And
We got to bid it.
So, I'd look at the cost to maintain it. You know, the old building is always going to cost more to maintain it, no matter what you do. It's also going to cost more to heat, more to air condition it. The standards have changed dramatically from when that building was built. You know, I like the idea that it's in here. The only question I have is, you know, whether or not we go for LEED certification on this thing, and that's a costly thing in there. When you start looking at the LEED certification, I notice you've got some of the issues in here that are there, but it's whether or not we want to go after that, because it's additional cost to be able to certify it that it's going to be there. So I think that's an issue. So, you know, I think, you know, it's whether or not we go out for a design and build, or whether we just go out and have our architect design something and then put it together. I think that's the question I have. to be able to do this. And I don't know if we want to bring this back at our county commission meeting, so we got some more time to think about it, or if we want to make a motion here to do something. I don't know.
I'm not ready.
I'm not really ready to make a decision here.
Were the architectural fees in your proposal, were they already in there?
Well, what we did,
The architectural and the engineering are both in the numbers, yes.
See, and that's why I say, like, if we're gonna bid it, that should be in there, because why would we want it? We already paid $45,000 to an architect, and we don't have anything, if you will. I would rather just do a turnkey operation. I think it'd be quicker, and, you know, in reference to Herb's comments, lead certified or not, we can come back with a couple
Yeah.
of numbers, one way or the other way, and then we get to make a decision. You know, if it costs $1 million extra, well, we're probably not too interested.
Sure. Let me say this, if you guys would have came to us the first time, you still have your $45,000, you knew what your building would cost. So you guys have spent $45,000 finding out what it would cost to renovate a building, to now find out, I don't know, what'd you guys pay us to come in here and tell you what we could do for something for new. And, you know, we go through this all the time where people spent $93,000, $105,000. I can name off, you know, different clients that have done that and can then come to us and let us design and let us build something for them that's within their means. And as I've told people in the past, if we can't design something that the people can afford and they like, you know, then we both lose, because Peninsula Construction does not get a job and does not get paid a nickel.
What's the time frame that you would have for it to be built by?
Well, the building you guys, the charter building we did up there, we broke ground on that on what, October 14th?
10 days before the township wanted us to.
Yeah.
But,
120 days.
October.
120 days from the time Garfield Township said we could move dirt.
Well, I think one of the things that we have to remember when we talk about the $45,000 architectural fees that we spent, a good piece of that was to identify the required space to adequately meet this thing.
Yes, let's not get it flushed.
You know, and that's information we had to have, whether we were asking you to build a building or anyone else.
Sure.
I think once, with what we have identified of what our space needs are, we have the ability to bid a design-build building, and then we can choose between 1, 2, 3, however many you want. But I think the assessment of what our spatial needs was had to be done first, and, you know, I wouldn't expect a contractor to do that on our behalf, so this is what we paid the architect.
We do it every day.
Just might mention a couple quick things about that. The other thing that you also have gained benefits from having him review, the architect review your building, anybody new coming on now knows what they got to work with. So there's a good assessment, what you need to do to know what to do. So that's good.
Well, and there's an assessment of the existing building, which we need when we try to market that building.
And the other thing, one last thing I'll say, we also, in this particular proposal we're making, we recognize that you would need your professional people, architects and engineers to review, like, for example, the whole specifications that we have done on the charter building, and we allocated $25,000 that we would give you that much credit toward doing that.
If I can make one comment, Dennis, before I call on you, because I don't think anybody's been more opposed to pouring more money into our current health department building than me, but, you know, I specifically remember asking the question of Ray Kendra when he was here, when we were talking about Tom's, like, well, how much to build the new building? And it was like, what, $200 a foot or more?
I can't remember the number, but it was considerably more.
I mean, this is under $100 a foot, right?
Yes.
Because 300,000 of this number is the land, right?
Yeah.
Go ahead, Dennis.
Yeah, just, let me say, without any question, and I'll answer this for Fred, he didn't quite get to it. We would much rather have a new building than remodel the existing building. The only reason we proposed remodeling the existing building was because we were strongly under the opinion that it was much more cost-effective to do. We would much rather have a new building. The difficulty with this is I have like 4 pages, 3 of which are pictures, and a cost of $2.4 million for 25,000 square feet. By the way, we're building 30,000 square feet, so there's 5,000 square feet difference. And these questions that we asked are just to kind of give us some information so that we can advise you on whether we're talking about the same thing or not. You know, when I keep hearing these gentlemen, and I know they know their work, but when I keep hearing them say this is very similar to the charter building, I'm sitting here saying to myself,
The skin is.
this building, yeah, the skin is, but this building is dental offices, labs, clinic rooms that all require plumbing. You know, and things like that, and they've said they've figured it in, but I haven't seen any numbers that verify that, or any drawings that verify that. This is all we have. And so, I think it's, and then, so you have to ask yourself the question, is this the direction you want to go? Remember, while I appreciate everything that they did, doesn't matter, you have to bid it anyway. So the more work they do on this, and I mean, if they want to do it for free, well, that's great for us, we save that. The only other option that I could tell you if you want to build a new building is, you're going to have the architect do a design feasibility study and tell you what it's going to cost you to build the new building. But that's the dilemma that you have. I appreciate everything that they've done, but I cannot tell you, and I don't think Fred can either, that this building for this price will meet your needs.
Can I make a suggestion? And I don't, is it possible that Sonny and Larry Fleece could work with staff to review this idea and come back in 2 weeks at our end of the month meeting with some sort of recommendation whether we should try to move forward or just stay on the course we're on?
We'd be glad to do that. In fact, I was planning on having a meeting with Larry and Larry.
Right.
And the architect is currently working on reviewing some of this. We were hoping to get answers to these questions from these gentlemen to help us along with that. But we're also looking at, to give you some comparison, the architect is out there looking at what the square footage cost of similar size health clinic space is, what it costs, so we can give you some other comparisons to tell if we're really online. So I'd be glad to do that, if that's helpful.
And anybody else who might be interested, you know.
Yeah, Chair, Vice Chair,
Yeah.
Commissioner Wheelock, that's fine.
That's fine.
Yeah.
You know, I think it's important, and I realize exactly what Dennis is saying. But I think when we have Kevin here tonight saying, I can build this building and answer all the questions you have. I can, you know, obviously he isn't going to build it off of these diagrams. I asked him to come and make a short presentation tonight for our consideration, so I think it's a good thing we have like this ad hoc committee.
Take a look at it.
We can do some further research into it.
If I can just comment, there's an anomaly in commercial real estate most people aren't aware of, that it costs more quite often to renovate an old building versus bulldoze it and build new.
Right.
It's
right.
No, I totally understand that, Rob, but I did ask the question of the architect, and, you know, he sort of put it out of reach. Now, I don't know if that was, you know, intentional or not. Go ahead.
All things considered, if we go this route, I think the interruption factor is a big one, I'm sure. And I got to tell you, I appreciate you going out of your way and putting your best entrepreneurial skills out there and making a suggestion. Because frankly, I mean, I think that's going to be the solution to a lot of our problems, is when people actually bring something forward, they say, hey, I can help you with this. And again, you know, I was going to ask the question, where were you in October? But you kind of said, you know, and essentially this is another reason why we're discussing putting things, you know, on the web, you know, when we're looking at projects, to get the heads up that we are looking at these things, and you're willing to bring forward drawings and everything. You haven't sent us a check or a bill we haven't approved or anything, but we can look at it. We can actually get a good idea of the direction we can go in, and even if we still have a lot of questions to be answered, like and there are a lot of questions to be answered. For example, I mean, it's an intense operation. The health department is, and there's a lot of water. There's a lot of ventilation concerns, piping. That isn't in the charter building, I can tell you.
Sure.
But, you know.
I'd like to elaborate a little bit. I don't know how many of you guys go to the doctor here, or the dentist, or is there anybody here that goes to any doctor that might be up on Royal Drive? We've built designed every building in there, built every building in there with the exception of 3. So when I tell you we can build a building for this, I know what I'm talking about.
All right.
All right, so,
All right.
you guys folks will look into it and
Yep.
bring back a report in 2
Yep.
weeks?
So, Cool. Thank you,
Okay.
guys.
Thank you very much, and thank you for your patience for our lengthy meeting. I should have pushed it out a little earlier.
No, that's Daryl.
Oh, that's Daryl, yeah.
Okay.
asked who was on the committee, and I said Larry.
This brings us to the opportunity for second public comment. Is there any public comment by any member of the public?
You'll have to wind him down.
Okay, item 12, Commissioner Committee Reports.
Just, oh, I'm sorry.
Go ahead. Commissioner Lemko first.
Yeah, I would like to see us, for one of our meetings next month, to look at the Transportation Alliance, maybe get a report back as to what they're doing and how they're doing. Just for informational purposes, and I don't think any of us understand all what they're doing. It was broken, and then they put it back together again. I don't know where it's at now, so just a question.
Could you talk to those folks maybe in, I guess Dennis, actually.
They were broken, never heard of
Maybe
Yeah,
some,
I think Georgia can give me a contact for them. I think Georgia and the Commission on Aging has worked with them, so
Yeah.
you want them to
Maybe-
come make a presentation?
Yeah, if they could, or give us some information, or, I don't,
maybe Public Health and Safety does.
I think it's still broken,
but I don't know,
all right.
so.
We could just get some information.
We will get that. I'll
If
get
we
some
get some
information for
on it, I
you.
would appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Commissioner Wheeler?
I got beat up pretty good at Long Lake Township last night about phone calls they're getting on the personal property tax surveys. And I would really ask that be put on the agenda for Ways and Means next week. I told them I'd ask that it be on the Ways and Means agenda and give them the opportunity to come and talk about the phone calls they're getting and the work that it's taking to help these people work through these questions.
And I will second that, and I will also say that I'm really wondering exactly who they're targeting, because there's some tiny little home businesses that have been getting phone calls demanding that they pay their personal property tax bills and so forth, and I
The
don't.
assessor last night, the assessor last night told me that she worked through a process with a little mom and pop operation out of their house, and when it's all over and done with, they owed $3.34 in
Right,
personal
and for
property
that,
tax.
the county has billed about $250, is that right?
Yeah. I've gotten one for one of the organizations we started last year. There's no assets. It's an investment group. You know, there's nothing there, and yet they're asking me to fill out this form.
I assume you'll want Lori there to answer questions.
Well, I think we need a review of exactly what is being done. I mean, I know, Sonny, you voted against it. I know I voted for it, but this is not, speaking of someone who voted for it, this is not what I had imagined.
I agree.
I was setting into motion.
Well, and the phone surveys are being done by people that don't even speak English.
Oh, my God. There wasn't even supposed to be a phone survey, if I can talk for a second. I mean, my understanding of what we approved is, we approved a company to come in to match the registered businesses versus the ones that had not filed, and to establish a list. And then Lori and her staff were going to take what time allocated that they had and to send them a letter asking them if this is applicable, fill it out and return it. I mean, I didn't hear anything about a phone bank or...
We should probably go back and review that, because I had a different understanding. Mine was that they were going to identify these businesses, potential businesses, and that they were going to provide those lists to the township, to the municipal assessors, and they were going to follow through on it. I didn't even think we were going to be following through, and I knew nothing of phone calls to these people.
Well,
I don't recall that at all.
One guy lives down the street who makes a few signs. I think the sum total of his personal property is he might have a jigsaw. He's gotten 4 calls. And as the calls have progressed, they've gotten, you know, more threatening about, you better pay your tax bill. Go ahead.
That's exactly what I was talking about earlier tonight. I was down in Mayfield Monday night. Kit Wilson, their assessor, was there, and John Okerts, the supervisor. John said the letter he got was very intimidating, and several other people were in the audience, but the letters are intimidating, they're calling, and like Kit said, they have an automatic statutorial deduction, if you will, of $1,000. You know, they don't even have to file if they don't have $1,000 worth of stuff. And my recollection of when we authorized this, we didn't want to spend $100 to collect $50 worth of thing.
That's right.
And they were going to target businesses with $50,000 or more, identify them that weren't paying, and turn it over, like Dennis said, to the assessors. And that's not being done at all, and we need to straighten this out because, and number two, that firm was from North Carolina, and let me tell you, the people out there are hot. Like they said, John said, I've been in business for years, and Kit is the assessor, and here they're harassing the daylights out of me. He says, I'm not in favor of it, and I wish you'd bring it up at your next committee meeting. I said, I will.
We have.
So I remember voting against that.
Yeah, you did.
We did.
Another fix we gotta make.
I attended the Resource Recovery Council meeting, and I just have to share this. They have a new game, Recycle Smart Bingo, and I got to tell you though, this thing looks like it is just so much fun, and everybody said so. Anyway,
How's Greg like it?
you know, the kids, the kids, well, you know, board games. The kids play, little kids play bingo, and they learn about recycling, and the teacher gets a recycle bag, and I just wanted to say that I just think it's cute, and,
It is cute.
and
Who's
recycle bingo.
paying for this?
I'm sorry?
Who's paying for it?
The county is paying for it, but I will tell you that these are all free, and, but anyway,
I know of at least 2 service clubs that did Monopoly, and they got a whole bunch of them still in their basement. They never sold.
well, these are just going to go and educate kids, and anyway,
they're
I
not
just
gonna
thought it was
try and
cute, and I
sell 'em.
wanted to bring it forward. Also, I did not know this, and I don't know if the board knows this, but American Waste is hauling their trash to Bay County.
Yeah, it was in the paper.
I mentioned that a while ago, that I see these big trucks going south.
And that's where they're going, and I thought that was
Well,
interesting, and,
they're going to be prosecuted.
well,
Are you talking, you're not talking
No,
American
you're not,
Waste.
no, we're talking about trash,
trash. Anyway, and
not solid waste.
the other thing, and I want, this is on
Solid
another subject entirely, but I would like the board to please consider this in our regular board packets. I received a packet on the sewer and water, for the Sewer and Water Committee, and in the first quarter of 2011, the total operating cash receipts, the first quarter, the septic treatment facility, was $62,205.95.
Well,
Now-
that's typical for the first quarter, though.
Actually, not if you...
Take out Bay Harbor,
Well,
that's typically what
yeah.
they get in the first quarter.
Well,
I wouldn't push the panic button on it.
well, that's not what I'm asking. What I'm asking for is, and I think the county board needs to see this every month, since we are partners in this endeavor, in making up the shortfall, I would like to see a cash flow statement every month, a balance sheet, and an income statement every month in our Ways and Means packet, just so that the county board knows where we are.
Commissioner Thomas.
Did anybody else get a little card from Williams and Bay Septic Pumping?
Yeah, I did.
That was a
That's a good education
that was a
piece.
good little card.
Yeah.
The county should have done it, and they're going to have to do something like that, but those people sent that out, and that was a good...
Does the commission want us to provide those 3 reports every month that Commissioner Max Bauer is
I get
asking
it.
for?
I would certainly be in favor of it.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's fine. I mean, if that's what they normally do in their packets.
passing
I mean,
information.
I was getting that stuff when I was on Septic Finance, but when Septic Finance ended, I stopped getting it unless I go seek it out, you know.
I don't see a balance sheet. I think it's just revenues.
Dean's
Just a
gonna
revenue
prepare-
budget.
Dean will
Revenue versus
prepare it.
budget. Yeah.
I don't want a 100-page report, no.
It's not.
Okay.
All he needs is the revenue
Actually,
versus budget
Commissioner
page.
Gilman, and then we will.
Well, yeah.
Just Just a couple of real quick ones. The East Bay Township Board did essentially passed a ban on medicinal marijuana. They would argue that it isn't one, but they restricted it into the caregiver operations into the industrial parks with setbacks of 1,000 feet from residential areas, which effectively limits any, all the surrounding residential areas around the industrial parks essentially took it out. I actually spoke up and in my personal capacity and spoke up and gave warning that they are probably going to get sued at some point. And as far as Peninsula Township had an interesting conversation the other night, was of course which fund they were going to pull their $46,183.96 from for their payment of the septic, and they wound up pulling that from the tower fund. Just one of them saying, why are we going to pay this?
Garfield Township voted to, or they were having a discussion on that, and they sent it back to the Planning Commission with some ideas of what they thought they would allow, but they didn't want to see it as outlawed. They said, put some guidelines into it. So the Planning Commission.
Medical marijuana. Yeah, the marijuana. Yeah, I was going to say, wait.
Medical marijuana. Excuse me.
Well, I went through that on the Traverse City Planning Commission last year, so I've got credit in that already, so I'm done.
I thought you said
Commissioner Wheelock.
Yeah, I guess the one comment that I would make about the septic facility is, remember, we are truly not a partner in this operation. We have agreed to loan them 50% of their shortfall, but we are strictly a financial tool that does that. We are not a partner. The 5 townships are still on the hook for the bill.
Commissioner Inman.
Status of the Department of Public Works Director position, and is Ross still on contract for outreach?
Chris Boudet is still scheduled as of yesterday to be released on May 6th. He has to report for his medical review on May 8th. He anticipates that will take 2 to 6 weeks to get through. Ross has indicated that he still is being paid and still is working, and he's indicated that if he gets a definitive time in that 2 to 6 week range, that he will continue on until Chris gets back. Tomorrow, the Water and Sewer Committee will be talking about this because they're going to have the proposal to hire somebody full-time. And I will be there to discuss it with them. Ross and I have talked about it at length, and I've talked to Chuck Korn about it, and indicated that they have to understand Chris will be back, and that position will be there for Chris, and that they will be paying double if they're going to bring another person on.
Yeah, but even with Chris coming back, is Ross still going to be?
No.
Has he agreed to do outreach?
I had heard that, but I haven't heard anything about that lately, so I don't know.
All right.
Okay.
Also, if I could, Mr. Chairman, just to let you know, those commissioners who were concerned about the S on septic treatment plant that was gone, I immediately called them the next morning and said, that needs to be replaced. But here's the interesting news.
It's gone again?
No.
That gave a real good image,
That is, well, we agree. That is the 3rd time that S has been taken off. Someone's taken them off. And so I just wanted you to know that was not the first occasion, it's the 3rd time.
In security cameras?
There you go.
Secure that ass sign.
I want everybody to know that the hockey game will be over with the time I get home.
I've been trying, Dickie, I really have. Okay, any other reports? Notices and/or announcements. Solid Waste Plan has a public hearing on April 21st at 7 p.m. at the Civic Center.
And that will be followed by a meeting of the Solid Waste Planning Committee.
Okay.
We're going to do the public hearing first, and then we will have
the meeting.
We'll have our meeting after that. We publish for the hearing at 7 o'clock. And hopefully, if I can get my tail in with Bob in the next couple days, we will have to the Solid Waste Planning Committee all of those things that I've talked about with you that we don't do that are in our plan. we will have those all identified. I've got a list, Bob has a list. We just have to get together and make sure that we both have the same list.
Okay.
For the interviews, does anybody have Tuesday the 3rd? Is that going to be all right for everybody to meet?
I'm fine, as far as I know. As long as it's not in the
Tuesday
morning.
the 3rd?
For what?
For interviewing for the,
As long as it's not in the morning. I've got
May 3rd?
first Tuesday of the month at 9 is the Commission on Aging.
would you rather do it on Thursday the 5th?
That's fine, that's fine for me.
Yeah, and I can't do it on Thursday.
But I mean, I can do
Thursday
it,
the
I can
5th,
do
I'm
it,
not
I can do it on the 3rd, I just can't do
Okay.
it in the morning.
We can do it in the afternoon, I don't
Yeah,
care.
the 3rd, I got it.
Why don't you guys
I
decide
gotta
that
meet.
after I'm going?
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
So Dennis,
Uh,
we'll do it on the
afternoon.
afternoon.
Any need for a closed session, Mr. Administrator? Okay.
Motion to adjourn.
Okay.
Sorry for
All
me,
in
I'm
favor?
You had I gotta ride home in this dog.
I hope you got lights on your bike.
Get your doodles.
Actually, I don't.